Hey everyone. Tonight we're diving deep into something that might just change how you think about going to sleep. The incredible stories of people who literally dream their way to fortune and fame. I'm talking about inventors, entrepreneurs, and creative geniuses who had visions while unconscious that made them millionaires, revolutionized entire industries, and changed the course of human history. You know what's absolutely wild? Some of the most important innovations in human civilization, from Google to the sewing machine, from the periodic table to the theory of relativity, all started because someone had a really vivid dream and was smart enough to pay attention when they woke up. We're talking about people who went from weird dream last night to let me just cash this $1 billion check. Here's my usual ask before we get started. Go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe. And definitely drop a comment about where you're listening from and what ungodly hour it is in your time zone. I'm endlessly fascinated by our global community of insomniacs who choose to fall asleep to stories about people making fortunes from their dreams. Oh, and if you find yourself drifting off somewhere in the middle of this, that's completely by design. That's literally what we're here for. Though, fair warning, some of these stories about dream-inspired success are so mind-blowing that they might actually keep you awake. Just thinking about all the million-dollar ideas floating around in your own subconscious right now. Tonight, we're exploring how the most lucrative ideas in human history have come to people while they were completely unconscious. What this tells us about the relationship between creativity and sleep, and why your next big breakthrough might be waiting for you in tonight's dreams. Because here's the thing about fortune-making dreams. They don't just happen to special people with magical brains. They happen to ordinary individuals who learn to pay attention to their unconscious mind and have the courage to act on insights that seem too crazy to work. Dreams don't just inspire you. They can literally make you rich if you know how to listen. Let's start with what might be the most expensive dream in human history. The night 23-year-old Larry Page had a vision about downloading the entire internet that led to the creation of Google and made him worth over $100 billion. And when I say this dream changed everything, I mean it literally reorganized how humanity accesses information, created the most powerful company on Earth, and turned a neurotic graduate student into one of the richest people who ever lived. Picture this, it's 1995, and Larry Page is a graduate student at Stanford University, feeling like a complete fraud who somehow tricked the admissions committee into accepting him into their prestigious computer science program. This isn't unusual, lots of brilliant people suffer from imposter syndrome, but Larry's anxiety about not belonging at Stanford was so intense that it was giving him panic attacks, insomnia, and weird stress dreams about academic failure that made him question whether he should just drop out and become a software engineer somewhere in Silicon Valley. Now, you have to understand the psychological pressure cooker that Stanford represented in the mid-1990s. This wasn't just any university, this was the epicenter of the emerging tech boom, where venture capitalists roamed the campus looking for the next big thing, where professors were becoming millionaires from their startups, and where graduate students were expected to either revolutionize technology or fail spectacularly trying. Larry Page came from an academic family. His father was a computer science professor at Michigan State. His mother taught computer programming, and his older brother was also pursuing graduate studies in computer science. This meant that Larry had been around computers and programming his entire life, but it also meant that he felt enormous pressure to live up to his family's intellectual achievements and prove that he belonged among the brightest minds in technology. But Stanford in 1995 was also an incredibly exciting and chaotic place to study computer science. The World Wide Web was exploding in popularity. Netscape had just gone public and made its founders incredibly wealthy. And everyone could sense that the internet was about to transform human civilization in ways that no one fully understood yet. Students and professors were launching startups in their spare time. Venture capital was flowing like water, and there was this electric feeling that anyone with a good idea could become the next tech billionaire. Larry was working on his PhD dissertation about web crawling and data mining, which sounds incredibly boring until you realize that in 1995, Nobody really understood how to organize and search the rapidly expanding internet. The web was growing so fast that traditional approaches to information organization were completely inadequate. Yahoo was basically just a manually curated directory. Alta Vista would give you thousands of random results that might or might not be relevant, and finding specific information online was like trying to find a particular grain of sand on a beach that was constantly getting bigger. But Larry was also dealing with intense personal anxiety that was making his academic work increasingly difficult. He was convinced that his professors and fellow students would eventually figure out that he wasn't smart enough to be at Stanford, that his research ideas were stupid, and that he was just wasting everyone's time with his web crawling projects. He was having trouble sleeping, struggling to concentrate during lectures, and starting to wonder if he should just abandon his PhD and get a regular programming job. The really ironic thing is that Larry's anxiety was partly caused by his own intelligence and curiosity. He was asking questions about web organization and information retrieval that were so fundamental and important that nobody else had even thought to ask them yet. But because he was exploring completely uncharted territory, he didn't have any professors or textbooks that could tell him whether his ideas were brilliant or completely insane. Larry was also struggling with what he later described as analysis paralysis. He could see so many different approaches to organizing web information that he couldn't decide which direction to pursue for his dissertation research. He was spending entire nights reading research papers, writing code, and trying different algorithms for analyzing web structure, but nothing seemed to produce the kind of breakthrough insights that would justify a Stanford PhD. But one night in late 1995, after another exhausting day of failed experiments and mounting anxiety about his academic future, Larry falls asleep at his desk in the Stanford Computer Science building. He'd been working for probably 18 hours straight, surviving on coffee and vending machine snacks, trying to figure out how to analyze the link structure of websites in ways that could reveal meaningful patterns about information quality and relevance. That's when Larry has this incredibly vivid and detailed dream where he somehow managed to download the entire World Wide Web onto a massive array of computers, not just the content of web pages, but all the links between different sites, creating a complete map of how the internet's information was connected. In his dream, he can visualize the web as this enormous network where every link represents a kind of vote or recommendation from one site to another. But here's where the dream gets really specific and technically sophisticated. Larry realizes that he can analyze this link structure mathematically, treating the web like a giant popularity contest where sites with more incoming links from other respected sites would be more authoritative and trustworthy. It wasn't just about counting links, though. The dream showed him that links from highly linked sites should count more than links from sites that nobody else linked to. When Larry wakes up from this dream, he's initially confused and disoriented because he's drooling on his keyboard and his neck is killing him from sleeping hunched over his desk. But as he starts to remember the details of his vision, he gets increasingly excited because he realizes that his unconscious mind has solved the fundamental problem that had been driving him crazy for months. Larry immediately grabs a pen and starts frantically writing down everything he can remember from the dream, sketching diagrams of how the link analysis algorithm would work and scribbling mathematical formulas for calculating what he starts calling PageRank, partly because it ranked web pages, and partly because his last name was Page, which is either brilliant branding or spectacular ego, depending on how you look at it. The core insight that came to Larry while he was unconscious was that the web wasn't just a collection of isolated documents, it was a social network where links represented relationships, endorsements, and judgments about quality and relevance. Every time someone created a link to another website, they were essentially casting a vote of confidence in that site's content. And sites that received votes from other well-connected sites should be considered more authoritative than sites that only got links from random personal homepages. Now, you have to understand that this was a completely revolutionary way of thinking about information organization in 1995. Traditional search engines relied on keyword matching and basic relevance. algorithms that could be easily gamed by website owners who stuff their pages with popular search terms. But Larry's dream algorithm was different because it analyzed the social structure of the web itself rather than just the content of individual pages. Larry spends the next several weeks developing the mathematical framework for his PageRank algorithm, writing code to test his ideas, and trying to convince his thesis advisor that this link analysis approach could be the foundation for a fundamentally better search engine. Initially, his professors are skeptical because the computational requirements for analyzing the entire web's link structure seem impossibly large for mid-1990s computer technology. But Larry is obsessed with proving that his dream-inspired algorithm actually works. He starts building what he calls the backrub search engine, using Stanford's computers to crawl web pages and analyze their link structures according to his PageRank formula. The early results are so promising that Larry convinces his fellow graduate student Sergey Brin to join the project and help him scale up the system. Sergey Brin was the perfect collaborator for Larry's vision because he brought complementary skills in mathematics and data analysis that could help refine and optimize the PageRank algorithm. Sergey was also interested in large-scale data mining projects, and he immediately understood the revolutionary potential of Larry's link analysis approach. Together, Larry and Sergey start building what would eventually become Google, initially running their search engine on Stanford's computer network and gradually expanding to more powerful hardware as their system attracted attention from other students and faculty. They're working 18-hour days, surviving on pizza and caffeine, completely obsessed with proving that their dream-inspired algorithm can organize the world's information better than any existing system. The psychological transformation that Larry experiences during this period is profound and lasting. He goes from feeling like an imposter who doesn't belong at Stanford to believing that he and Sergey have discovered something that could change how billions of people access information. His anxiety about academic failure is replaced by excitement about entrepreneurial opportunity and the possibility of creating something that could make them incredibly wealthy and influential. But Larry and Sergey also start to realize that their search engine is too good and too expensive to remain an academic research project. The PageRank algorithm requires enormous computational resources to analyze the web's complete link structure, and Stanford's computers aren't sufficient to handle the scale of crawling and indexing that a comprehensive search engine would require. So in 1996, Larry and Sergey make the decision that will change their lives forever. They decide to turn their academic research into a commercial venture. They start looking for investors who can provide the funding necessary to build the massive computer infrastructure that their search engine requires. This is a huge psychological leap for both of them because they're essentially betting their academic careers on the belief that Larry's dream-inspired algorithm can compete with established companies like Yahoo and AltaVista. The early fundraising process is both exhilarating and terrifying for Larry and Sergey. They're pitching their search engine to venture capitalists who have seen dozens of internet startups and are looking for the next big thing that could generate massive returns. Larry has to explain how his PageRank algorithm works, why it's better than existing search technologies, and how they plan to turn web search into a profitable business. But Larry's dream-inspired confidence in his algorithm helps him convince investors that Google represents a fundamentally different approach to organizing information. Instead of just matching keywords or relying on human editors like Yahoo, Google would use the collective intelligence of web authors to determine which sites were most authoritative and relevant for any given search query. In 1998, Larry and Sergey officially found Google as a company, moving their operations from Stanford's campus to a garage in Menlo Park that they rent from Susan Wojcicki, who would later become CEO of YouTube. They hire their first employees, start serving search results to the public, and begin the process of scaling their technology to handle millions of search queries per day. The early success of Google is almost immediate and overwhelming. Users quickly discover that Google's search results are dramatically more relevant and useful than what they can get from Yahoo, AltaVista, or other existing search engines. The PageRank algorithm that emerged from Larry's dream is so effective at identifying high-quality websites that Google starts gaining market share at an incredible rate. But the real breakthrough for Google comes when Larry and Sergey figure out how to monetize their search engine through targeted advertising. They develop AdWords, a system that allows businesses to bid on keywords and display ads alongside search results. This creates a revenue model that can generate enormous profits from Google's growing user base, while maintaining the quality and independence of their search results. The advertising model that Google develops becomes one of the most lucrative business innovations in history. Because Google's search results are so relevant and useful, people trust the platform and are more likely to click on ads that appear alongside their search queries. This creates a virtuous cycle where better search results attract more users, which generates more advertising revenue, which funds better technology and more comprehensive indexing of the web. Larry's personal wealth grows exponentially as Google becomes one of the most valuable companies in the world. The dream that came to him while he was sleeping at his Stanford desk has literally made him one of the richest people in human history. But the psychological impact goes beyond just financial success. Larry has proven to himself that his anxiety and self-doubt were completely unfounded, and that his weird, obsessive interest in web crawling was actually the key to solving one of the most important technological challenges of the internet age. The broader impact of Larry's dream extends far beyond personal wealth to reshape global communication, commerce, and culture in ways that continue to influence human civilization today. Google's search algorithm became the foundation for online advertising, social media, artificial intelligence, and basically every digital service that we use in modern life. Google's success also demonstrates how dream-inspired innovations can create network effects and economic opportunities that exceed any individual's imagination. Larry dreamed about organizing information, but he accidentally created the infrastructure for the entire digital economy. Every smartphone app, every e-commerce website, every online video platform depends on the search and advertising technologies that originated from Larry's unconscious vision. The really wild part is that Larry's dream wasn't just about technology, it was about understanding human behavior and social networks before social media even existed. His unconscious mind somehow grasped that the web wasn't just a collection of documents, but a social system where links represented relationships, endorsements, and collective intelligence about information quality. Google's PageRank algorithm also became the inspiration for countless other ranking and recommendation systems that shape how we discover everything from movies and music to potential romantic partners. The basic insight that emerged from Larry's dream, that social connections can reveal quality and relevance better than pure content analysis, has influenced algorithm design throughout the tech industry. But perhaps most importantly, Larry's story demonstrates that the most valuable innovations often come from paying attention to unconscious insights that seem too strange or ambitious to work. His dream about downloading the entire internet was completely impractical from a technical standpoint in 1995, but it provided the conceptual framework for building systems that could achieve similar results through more efficient methods. Larry Page's journey from anxious graduate student to tech billionaire shows us that dream-inspired innovation requires not just having the vision, but also having the psychological courage to act on insights that contradict conventional wisdom and exceed current technological capabilities. His willingness to bet his academic career on a search algorithm that emerged from a stress dream created one of the most successful companies in human history. The ongoing success of Google and its parent company Alphabet continues to validate Larry's dream-inspired approach to organizing information. The company now employs over 150,000 people, generates hundreds of billions in annual revenue, and influences how billions of people access knowledge and connect with each other online. When your dream about downloading the internet creates a company worth over $1, 7 trillion and fundamentally changes how human civilization processes information, you're dealing with the kind of unconscious insight that demonstrates the incredible value of paying attention to what your sleeping brain is trying to tell you about solving the world's most important problems. Larry Page's Google Dream reminds us that sometimes the most lucrative and transformative ideas come not through systematic analysis or market research, but through unconscious pattern recognition that operates while we're asleep, synthesizing complex information in ways that our conscious minds couldn't achieve through deliberate effort. Now let me tell you about Elias Howe, who had one of the most terrifying nightmares in history that made him rich and revolutionized how clothes are made worldwide. And when I say terrifying, I mean this guy dreamed about being captured by cannibals who threatened to kill him if he couldn't invent a sewing machine. And the solution that saved his life in the dream made him a millionaire in real life and changed the entire textile industry forever. Picture this. It's 1845 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And Elias Howe is a struggling inventor living in what can only be described as genteel poverty. This isn't just about being broke. Howe's family is genuinely desperate, surviving on whatever work he can find while he obsessively tinkers with mechanical contraptions that nobody understands and nobody wants to buy. His wife Eliza is seriously ill, probably with tuberculosis, and their children are wearing clothes with patches on top of patches because they can't afford new fabric, let alone new garments. Now, you have to understand the context that makes Howe's situation so psychologically devastating. This is the 1840s, during the early Industrial Revolution, when mechanical innovations are making some people incredibly wealthy while leaving others behind in crushing poverty. Howe can see that machines are replacing human labor in factories throughout New England, but he can't figure out how to create something that would lift his own family out of destitution. Howe has been working on sewing machine designs for years, but he keeps getting stuck on the same fundamental engineering problem that had defeated every previous inventor who attempted to mechanize stitching: how to make a needle that can form stitches automatically rather than requiring the careful hand-eye coordination that human seamstresses had been using for thousands of years. Traditional hand sewing uses needles with eyes at the blunt end, which makes perfect sense when you're pulling thread through fabric with your fingers. But mechanical sewing requires the thread to catch and loop in ways that create interlocking stitches. And every design that Howe tries with conventional needles fails because the thread either slips out, breaks, or creates weak connections that fall apart under stress. Howe has filled notebooks with sketches of different needle designs, thread feeding mechanisms, and fabric holding systems, but nothing works reliably enough to be commercially viable. He's probably spent hundreds of hours in his cramped workshop, surrounded by broken prototypes and failed experiments, growing increasingly desperate as his family's financial situation becomes more dire. But Howe is also dealing with intense social pressure from family members and friends who think he's wasting time on impossible mechanical fantasies, instead of finding steady work that could support his sick wife and hungry children. In the 1840s, inventors were often viewed as eccentric dreamers who neglected practical responsibilities in favor of impractical schemes. And Howe is facing constant criticism from people who think he should abandon his mechanical obsessions and focus on reliable employment. The psychological burden of being an unsuccessful inventor in a society that was rapidly becoming mechanized must have been enormous. Howe could see that mechanical innovations were creating unprecedented wealth and transforming entire industries, but he couldn't figure out how to participate in this technological revolution or create something that would improve his family's circumstances. Howe was also probably suffering from what we would now recognize as chronic stress and sleep deprivation. Inventors in the 19th century often worked incredibly long hours, surviving on coffee and determination while pushing themselves to physical and mental exhaustion. Howe's later writings suggest that he was averaging maybe 4 hours of sleep per night during the period, when he was trying to solve the sewing machine problem. But then Howe has this absolutely horrifying nightmare that becomes the turning point in his life and ultimately in the history of textile production. In his dream, he's been captured by a tribe of cannibals who have somehow learned about his reputation as an inventor and decided to test his abilities in the most extreme way possible. The cannibals in Howe's dream aren't the racist stereotypes that were common in 19th century popular culture. They're depicted as intelligent, organized people with their own sophisticated technology and social systems. But they have a problem that requires mechanical innovation, and they've decided that Howe is either going to solve it for them or become their dinner. The cannibal chief explains to How that their tribe has been trying to mechanize textile production to create more efficient clothing and trade goods, but every inventor they've consulted has failed to create a working sewing machine. They give How an ultimatum: invent a functional sewing machine within 24 hours, or they'll torture him to death in elaborate ways before eating him in a ceremonial feast. In his dream, How is frantically trying to build a sewing machine while the cannibals dance around him, getting more impatient and threatening by the hour. He's working with unfamiliar tools and materials, under constant pressure from captors, who are sharpening their cooking knives and discussing various recipes for preparing inventor stew. The psychological terror of this dream scenario is almost unbearable. How is trapped in a situation where his mechanical skills literally determine whether he lives or dies, but he's trying to solve the same engineering problem that has been defeating him for years. Every failed attempt brings him closer to a gruesome death, and the cannibals are becoming increasingly skeptical about his abilities as an inventor. As the 24-hour deadline approaches in his dream, How hasn't succeeded in creating a working sewing machine. He's tried every needle design he can think of, every thread-feeding mechanism he's ever sketched, every fabric-holding system he's ever imagined. The cannibals are losing patience, and How can hear them arguing about whether to kill him quickly or slowly, whether to roast him or boil him, and which parts of his body would be most tender and flavorful. When the deadline arrives, the cannibals grab How and start stabbing him repeatedly with their spears. But here's the crucial detail that changed textile history forever. As How is being stabbed, he notices that all the cannibal spears have holes near the pointed tips, not at the blunt ends like traditional needles. This detail seems random and irrelevant in the context of being murdered by cannibals, but How's unconscious mind immediately grasps the engineering implications. What if sewing machine needles had eyes near the point instead of at the base? That would allow the thread to pass through the fabric, catch on a secondary thread underneath, and form the kind of interlocking stitches that mechanical sewing requires. How wakes up from this nightmare with his heart pounding and his sheets soaked with sweat, but instead of just being relieved to be alive, he immediately realizes that the cannibal spears have provided the solution to his sewing machine problem. The eye near the point needle design would allow thread to catch properly and form lock stitches that are strong, consistent, and suitable for mass production. He rushes to his workshop, probably still in his night clothes, because when you've just solved a years-long engineering problem through a nightmare about cannibals, you don't waste time getting dressed and start sketching needle designs based on what he saw in his dream. The mechanical principles that had eluded him for years suddenly seem obvious and straightforward. How spends the next several days building prototypes based on his dream-inspired needle design, and for the first time in years, everything works. The thread passes through the fabric cleanly, catches on the bobbin thread underneath, and creates strong, consistent stitches at a speed that no human hand could match. But How also faces the challenge of translating his dream revelation into a practical, marketable invention. Creating a single working needle is just the beginning. He needs to design entire mechanical systems for feeding fabric, controlling thread tension and coordinating all the moving parts that would make automatic sewing possible. The engineering work that follows How's nightmare is incredibly sophisticated and detailed. He has to figure out how to make needles strong enough to penetrate multiple layers of fabric without breaking, how to control thread tension so stitches are neither too loose nor too tight, and how to coordinate the timing of needle movement, fabric feeding, and thread catching so everything works together smoothly. How also has to solve manufacturing problems related to producing sewing machines at scale. Each machine requires dozens of precision-made parts that must work together reliably. And in the 1840s, the precision manufacturing techniques necessary for mass production were still being developed. But the psychological transformation that How experiences after his cannibal nightmare is as dramatic as the technical breakthrough. He goes from feeling like a failed inventor who's wasting his time on impossible projects to knowing that he solved one of the most important engineering challenges of the Industrial Revolution. The confidence that comes from his dream-inspired success affects every aspect of How's approach to invention and business. He starts thinking more systematically about patent protection, manufacturing partnerships, and marketing strategies that could turn his mechanical innovation into sustainable wealth. Howe files his sewing machine patent on September 10, 1846, and it becomes one of the most valuable and contested patents of the 19th century. His machine can sew 250 stitches per minute, compared to about 40 for even the fastest human seamstress, representing a productivity improvement that revolutionizes textile manufacturing. But Howe's success also creates enormous legal and business challenges. Other inventors and manufacturers immediately start copying his design and trying to circumvent his patent through minor modifications. Howe spends years in court defending his intellectual property rights and fighting patent infringement cases against companies that are making millions of dollars using variations of his dream-inspired needle design. The legal battles that Howe faces are both expensive and psychologically exhausting. He's fighting against well-funded companies with teams of lawyers, while he's still relatively poor and trying to establish his manufacturing business. Several times, Howe comes close to bankruptcy because he's spending more money on legal fees than he's earning from his invention. But Howe's persistence in defending his patents eventually pays off enormously. He wins most of his court cases and establishes legal precedents that allow him to collect royalties from every sewing machine manufacturer in America. By the 1850s, Howe is earning over $200,000 per year in patent royalties, equivalent to millions of dollars in today's money, making him one of the wealthiest inventors of his era. The economic impact of Howe's nightmare-inspired innovation extends far beyond his personal wealth to transform entire industries and social patterns. His sewing machine makes clothing production faster, cheaper, and more consistent, which helps fuel the ready-to-wear fashion industry and makes quality clothing accessible to working-class families for the first time in history. Before Howe's invention, most clothing was either made at home by family members or custom-tailored by professional seamstresses and tailors, making fashionable garments expensive luxuries that only wealthy people could afford. The sewing machine enables mass production of standardized clothing sizes and styles, creating the foundation for modern fashion and retail industries. Howe's sewing machine also has profound social implications for women's work and economic opportunities. While the mechanization of sewing eliminates some traditional female employment, it also creates new opportunities for women to work in textile factories and garment shops, often earning higher wages than they could in domestic service or agricultural work. The speed and efficiency of machine sewing also transforms household labor patterns. Women who previously spent enormous amounts of time hand sewing clothes for their families can now complete the same work much more quickly, freeing up time for other productive activities or leisure pursuits. But Howe's invention also contributes to the exploitation of garment workers in early industrial factories, where the speed and efficiency of sewing machines creates pressure for workers to produce ever larger quantities of clothing under increasingly demanding conditions. The sweatshop labor practices that become common in the textile industry are partly enabled by the productivity improvements that Howe's nightmare made possible. The international impact of Howe's dream-inspired invention spreads rapidly throughout the industrialized world. European manufacturers license his patent and adapt his designs for their own markets. And sewing machine production becomes a major industry in countries like Germany, France, and England. Howe's sewing machine also influences the development of other mechanical innovations by demonstrating how complex, coordinated machinery could replace skilled human labor in industries that had previously seemed unsuitable for mechanization. His success inspires other inventors to tackle similar challenges in areas like shoemaking, bookbinding, and furniture manufacturing. The marketing and distribution of Howe's sewing machines creates some of the first mass-market advertising campaigns and installment payment plans in American commercial history. Sewing machine companies develop sophisticated sales techniques, including door-to-door demonstrations and financing options that allow working-class families to purchase expensive machinery over time. Howe himself becomes a celebrity inventor whose success story is widely publicized in newspapers and magazines throughout the country. His transition from desperate poverty to enormous wealth captures the American imagination and reinforces cultural beliefs about the opportunities available to innovative individuals willing to pursue their mechanical visions. But Howe's later life is complicated by the psychological effects of his early struggles and the pressures that come with sudden wealth and fame. He never fully adjusts to being rich and powerful after years of poverty and desperation, and he struggles with guilt about profiting from an invention that sometimes displaces traditional workers. Howe also becomes involved in various philanthropic activities, using his wealth to support educational institutions and charitable organizations that help working-class families improve their circumstances. He seems to understand that his fortune came partly from social and economic changes that created hardships for some people, and he tries to use his resources to address some of these problems. The American Civil War creates new demands for Howe's sewing machines as the military needs enormous quantities of uniforms, tents, and other textile products that can be produced quickly and cheaply using mechanized manufacturing. Howe's patent royalties increased dramatically during the war years, making him even wealthier while also contributing to the Union's logistical advantages. But the war also forces Howe to confront the moral implications of his invention when he realizes that the same machines that clothe soldiers are also being used to produce Confederate uniforms and equipment. The neutrality of mechanical innovation becomes a source of personal conflict for someone who supports the Union, but profits from technology that benefits both sides. Howe's later efforts to improve and refine his sewing machine design are motivated partly by his desire to maintain his competitive advantage as other inventors develop alternative approaches to mechanized sewing. He continues innovating throughout his life, filing dozens of additional patents for improvements to needle design, thread feeding, and machine operation. The technical evolution of Howe's sewing machine designs reflects his growing understanding of manufacturing efficiency and user convenience. Later versions of his machines are easier to operate, more reliable, and better adapted to different types of sewing tasks, from delicate embroidery to heavy-duty industrial applications. Howe's influence on industrial design extends beyond sewing machines to include his advocacy for precision manufacturing standards and quality control procedures that ensure consistent performance across mass-produced machinery. His insistence on engineering excellence helps establish American manufacturing as competitive with European industrial production. The business empire that Howe builds around his nightmare-inspired invention includes not just sewing machine manufacturing, but also thread production, needle manufacturing, and various accessories that support the mechanized sewing industry. His integrated approach to business creates vertical control over the entire supply chain needed for automated textile production. Howe's relationships with other inventors and entrepreneurs in the sewing machine industry are complex mixtures of collaboration and competition. While he defends his patents aggressively, he also participates in cross-licensing agreements and joint ventures that help standardize sewing machine technology and expand the overall market for mechanized sewing. The legacy of Howe's cannibal nightmare extends beyond sewing machines to influence how inventors approach the psychological and creative aspects of technical problem solving. His story becomes an important example of how unconscious mental processes can provide solutions to engineering challenges that conscious analysis cannot resolve. Howe's later writings about his invention process emphasize the importance of persistent effort combined with openness to unexpected sources of inspiration. He argues that inventors must be willing to consider ideas that seem strange or illogical at first, because breakthrough innovations often come from combining familiar concepts in unfamiliar ways. The educational impact of Howe's success story influences American attitudes toward technical education and vocational training. His example demonstrates that practical mechanical skills can create enormous wealth and social impact, encouraging investment in engineering education and industrial training programs. Howe's approach to patent protection and intellectual property rights helps establish legal precedents that continue to influence how inventors protect and profit from their innovations. His successful defense of his sewing machine patents creates case law that strengthens patent enforcement and encourages further technical innovation. The international licensing of Howe's patents creates some of the first global technology transfer agreements in industrial history. His willingness to license his designs to foreign manufacturers, while maintaining control over key technical improvements, provides a model for international technology commercialization that remains relevant today. But perhaps the most profound impact of Howe's nightmare-inspired invention is its demonstration that individual creativity and technical innovation can reshape entire social and economic systems. His single engineering breakthrough, born from a terrifying dream about cannibals with unusual spears, changed how billions of people clothed themselves and created industries that continue to employ millions of workers worldwide. Howe's story also illustrates the unpredictable ways that psychological experiences can influence technical innovation. His cannibal nightmare provided not just a solution to a specific engineering problem, but also the psychological confidence and determination necessary to transform a mechanical concept into a successful business empire. The modern clothing industry, from high fashion to fast fashion, remains fundamentally dependent on technologies and manufacturing processes that can be traced back to Howe's dream-inspired realization that sewing machine needles should have eyes near their points rather than at their bases. When your nightmare about being stabbed by cannibals with unusual spears leads to one of the most important industrial innovations in human history and makes you rich enough to afford a mansion, instead of worrying about having enough money for your next meal, you're dealing with the kind of unconscious problem-solving that demonstrates the incredible creative potential of the human mind during sleep. Elias Howe's cannibal nightmare reminds us that some of the most important technological breakthroughs come not through systematic engineering analysis, but through dreams that provide our unconscious minds with opportunities to combine familiar concepts in revolutionary ways that conscious thought alone cannot achieve. Let me tell you about Dmitry Mendeleev, the Russian chemist who literally dreamed the periodic table into existence and became so wealthy and famous that he was essentially the Bill Gates of 19th century chemistry. And when I say he dreamed it, I mean after 3 days of failed attempts to organize the chemical elements, he fell asleep at his desk and woke up with the solution that made him rich, revolutionized science forever, and created the foundation for every chemistry textbook, pharmaceutical company, and materials science laboratory that exists today. Picture this, it's February 1869 in St. Petersburg, Russia, and Dmitry Mendeleev is having what can only be described as the academic equivalent of a nervous breakdown. He's been working non-stop for 3 days and nights, surviving entirely on black coffee, cigarettes, and whatever stale bread he can find in his kitchen, trying to write a chemistry textbook that his publisher is demanding and his students desperately need. Now you have to understand the impossible challenge that Mendeleev was facing. This isn't just about organizing information for a textbook. He's trying to make sense of the 63 known chemical elements in a way that students can actually understand and memorize. Chemistry in 1869 was basically a collection of random facts about different substances, with no underlying organizational principles that could help people predict how elements would behave or relate to each other. Mendeleev knows there has to be some kind of logical pattern connecting the elements, because he spent years studying their properties and seeing hints of relationships and similarities that suggest underlying order. But every organizational system he tries falls apart when he gets to certain elements that don't fit the pattern. Elements that seem to contradict whatever rules he thinks he's discovered. The pressure that Mendeleev is under is both financial and intellectual. He's a professor at the University of St. Petersburg, but professors in 19th century Russia weren't particularly well paid, and he needs the income from his textbook to support his family and maintain his research. But he also can't publish a chemistry book that's just a random list of elements and their properties. Students and colleagues would laugh at him, and his academic reputation would be destroyed. Russian academic culture in the 1860s was intensely competitive and politically charged. The country was undergoing massive social and economic reforms following the emancipation of the serfs, and there was enormous pressure on Russian intellectuals to prove that they could compete with Western, European science and scholarship. Mendeleev feels the weight of representing Russian chemistry to the international scientific community, And he knows that a mediocre textbook could damage not just his personal career, but Russia's scientific reputation. But Mendeleev is also dealing with what we would now recognize as obsessive-compulsive tendencies that make him incapable of accepting incomplete or imperfect organizational systems. He's filled dozens of notebooks with different arrangements of the elements, trying every possible ordering system he can imagine, alphabetical, by atomic weight, by chemical properties, by the year of discovery, by geographical origin of the samples. Mendeleev's desk is covered with handwritten cards for each of the 63 known elements, showing their atomic weights, chemical properties, and behavioral characteristics. He's been arranging and rearranging these cards like some kind of demented solitaire game, looking for patterns that might reveal the underlying logic of chemical behavior. The really frustrating thing for Mendeleev is that he can see hints of patterns everywhere, but none of them work consistently. Elements with similar properties seem to appear at regular intervals when arranged by atomic weight, but there are always exceptions that break the pattern. Elements in the same chemical family seem to be related, but their atomic weights don't follow any obvious mathematical relationships. Mendeleev has also been corresponding with other chemists throughout Europe who are working on similar organizational challenges. And he knows that several other scientists are racing to discover the same systematic principles that he's seeking. The competitive pressure is enormous because whoever solves the element organization problem first will become internationally famous and potentially wealthy from textbook sales and consulting fees. German chemist Julius Lothar Meyer is working on very similar ideas about periodic relationships between elements. And Mendeleev knows that Meyer could publish his organizational system at any time. French chemist Alexandre-Émile Bigaillard de Chancourtois has already proposed a telluric screw arrangement that shows some periodic patterns, though his system is too complex and theoretical for practical use. The psychological pressure of this scientific competition, combined with his financial pressures and the intellectual challenge of the organizational problem, has pushed Mendeleev to a state of exhaustion and near delirium. He's been working almost continuously for 72 hours, drinking coffee by the pot and smoking cigarettes until his office is thick with tobacco smoke. Mendeleev's approach to the element organization problem reflects his background as both a theoretical chemist and a practical experimentalist. He's not just looking for mathematical patterns, he wants an organizational system that can predict chemical behavior, explain experimental observations, and help chemists understand why elements behave the way they do. But by the third day of continuous work, Mendeleev's notes are becoming increasingly erratic and desperate. He's trying combinations of properties that make no logical sense, arranging elements according to their colors, their melting points, their crystal structures, anything that might reveal some hidden order. His handwriting is getting progressively worse as fatigue affects his motor control, and some of his later notes are barely legible. Finally, on February 17, 1869, Mendeleev is so exhausted that he literally cannot keep his eyes open any longer. He's sitting at his desk, surrounded by element cards and failed organizational charts, when he simply collapses forward and falls asleep face down on his papers, probably drooling on months of work. That's when Mendeleev has one of the most important dreams in scientific history. In his vision, he sees all 63 known elements perfectly arranged in a table based on their atomic weights and chemical properties. But this isn't just any table, it's a systematic arrangement where everything makes sense, where the patterns are clear and obvious, where the relationships between elements are logical and predictable. In his dream, Mendeleev can see that when elements are arranged in order of increasing atomic weight, their properties repeat in regular cycles or periods. Elements with similar chemical behaviors appear at regular intervals, forming families or groups with predictable characteristics. The whole system has an elegant mathematical beauty that explains not just what chemists had already observed, but predicts properties of elements that haven't been discovered yet. But here's what makes Mendeleev's dream truly remarkable. He doesn't just see the organizational pattern, he understands the underlying logic that makes it work. The periodic repetition of properties reflects fundamental relationships between atomic structure and chemical behavior that won't be fully understood until the development of quantum mechanics decades later. Mendeleev wakes up from this dream feeling like he's received a divine revelation about the structure of matter itself. He immediately starts writing down everything he can remember from his vision, sketching out the table arrangement and filling in the properties of each element according to the pattern he saw while unconscious. When Mendeleev checks his dream-inspired table against the known properties of the elements, he discovers that everything fits perfectly except for one element, tellurium, which seemed to be in the wrong position according to its atomic weight. But instead of assuming his dream was wrong, Mendeleev concludes that the accepted atomic weight for tellurium must be incorrect. And when he double-checks the experimental data, he discovers that he's right and the published value was wrong. But here's where Mendeleev's dream becomes truly prophetic and revolutionary. His table has empty spaces where he predicts undiscovered elements should exist. Based on the periodic patterns he saw in his dream, Mendeleev can describe in detail what properties these missing elements should have, including their atomic weights, chemical behaviors, and physical characteristics. This is absolutely unprecedented in the history of science. Mendeleev isn't just organizing known information. He's using his dream-inspired table to predict the existence and properties of elements that haven't been discovered yet. It's like having a cheat code for chemistry that tells you what to look for before you start looking. Mendeleev publishes his periodic table in March 1869, just a few weeks after his prophetic dream, and the initial reaction from the scientific community is skeptical and dismissive. Many chemists think his organizational system is too speculative and theoretical to be useful, and his predictions about undiscovered elements seem like wild speculation rather than serious science. But then something amazing happens that makes Mendeleev internationally famous and validates his dream-inspired insights. In 1875, French chemist Paul-Émile Lecoq de Bois-Baudouin discovers gallium, a new element that matches Mendeleev's predictions for Eka aluminum almost exactly. The atomic weight, density, melting point, and chemical properties that Mendeleev had predicted based on his periodic table are confirmed by experimental observation. The discovery of gallium creates a sensation in the international scientific community because it proves that Mendeleev's periodic table isn't just a convenient filing system for known elements. It's a powerful predictive tool that can guide the search for new substances and explain their properties before they're even discovered. When germanium is discovered in 1886 and scandium in 1879, they also match Mendeleev's predictions with remarkable accuracy, cementing his reputation as one of the greatest scientific geniuses of the 19th century. Chemists around the world start using his periodic table to guide their research and understand chemical behavior in systematic ways that had never been possible before. The commercial and economic impact of Mendeleev's dream-inspired discovery is enormous and immediate. Chemical companies throughout Europe and America start paying him substantial consulting fees to help them understand and predict chemical behavior using his periodic system. His insights into element properties become essential for developing new industrial processes, pharmaceutical compounds, and technological innovations. Mendeleev's periodic table becomes the foundation for modern chemistry and chemical industry. Every pharmaceutical company, every materials science laboratory, every industrial chemistry operation in the world uses organizational principles that emerged from his exhausted vision in 1869. The predictive power of his system guides the development of everything from steel alloys to electronic semiconductors to synthetic polymers. But Mendeleev's success also transforms him personally from a struggling academic into one of the most well-compensated and influential scientists of his era. Russian and international chemical companies compete to hire him as a consultant, offering enormous fees for his expertise in applying periodic principles to practical chemical problems. Mendeleev writes chemistry textbooks that become international bestsellers, translated into dozens of languages and used in universities throughout Europe, America, and Asia. His Principles of Chemistry earns him substantial royalties and establishes him as the leading authority on systematic chemical knowledge worldwide. The Russian government recognizes Mendeleev's international scientific fame and appoints him to influential positions that come with significant financial rewards. He becomes director of the Bureau of Weights and Measures, a role that allows him to standardize Russian measurement systems while earning a salary, equivalent to hundreds of thousands of dollars in today's money. Mendeleev uses his position at the Bureau of Weights and Measures to modernize Russian industrial standards and help Russian companies compete more effectively with Western European manufacturers. His scientific expertise becomes a tool for national economic development, and he earns additional income from consulting work with Russian industrial enterprises. But Mendeleev's wealth and influence extend beyond chemistry to include involvement in Russian economic policy, educational reform, and technological development. He becomes one of the most prominent public intellectuals in late 19th century Russia, using his scientific fame to advocate for modernization and rational approaches to social and economic problems. The international licensing and translation of Mendeleev's textbooks creates some of the first global intellectual property arrangements in scientific publishing. Chemical companies and educational institutions worldwide pay substantial fees to use his organizational systems and predictive methods, creating ongoing revenue streams that continue throughout his lifetime. Mendeleev's approach to consulting work with industrial clients demonstrates how fundamental scientific discoveries can be translated into practical economic value. His periodic table provides a systematic framework for understanding chemical behavior that helps companies develop new products, improve manufacturing processes, and solve technical problems more efficiently. The psychological transformation that Mendeleev experiences from his dream-inspired success affects every aspect of his later career and personal life. He develops enormous confidence in his scientific intuition and becomes more willing to propose bold theoretical ideas that challenge conventional thinking in chemistry and physics. Mendeleev's later research includes pioneering work on the properties of gases, the nature of chemical solutions, and the relationship between chemical structure and physical properties. His dream-inspired understanding of systematic relationships in chemistry guides his investigations into areas that wouldn't be fully developed until decades after his death. But Mendeleev's success also creates some personal and professional challenges. His fame and wealth make him a target for criticism from colleagues, who are jealous of his success or skeptical of his theoretical approaches. Some chemists argue that his periodic table is more lucky than scientific, and that his predictions about undiscovered elements are just educated guesses rather than genuine theoretical insights. Mendeleev responds to these criticisms by continuing to refine and improve his periodic system, incorporating new experimental data and theoretical insights as they become available. His willingness to modify his original table based on new evidence demonstrates the scientific integrity that made his dream-inspired discovery so valuable and enduring. The discovery of additional elements throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries continues to validate Mendeleev's periodic predictions and enhance his scientific reputation. Each new element that fits his systematic framework provides additional confirmation that his dream vision had captured fundamental truths about the organization of matter. But Mendeleev's periodic table also raises profound questions about the nature of scientific discovery and the role of intuitive insight in understanding natural phenomena. His dream-inspired breakthrough suggests that unconscious mental processes can sometimes access patterns and relationships that conscious analytical thinking cannot detect. The influence of Mendeleev's work extends beyond chemistry to affect the development of atomic theory, quantum mechanics, and modern physics. His recognition that chemical properties repeat in regular periods provides crucial evidence for the existence of atomic structure and the quantized nature of electronic behavior that forms the foundation of 20th century science. Mendeleev's business relationships with international chemical companies help establish some of the first global technology transfer agreements in scientific history. His willingness to share his systematic knowledge with industrial clients while maintaining intellectual property rights creates models for academic-industry collaboration that remain relevant today. The educational impact of Mendeleev's periodic table transforms how chemistry is taught and learned throughout the world. Students can now memorize and understand chemical behavior, using systematic principles rather than trying to memorize random collections of facts about different substances. Mendeleev's approach to scientific communication and public engagement demonstrates how fundamental discoveries can be made accessible to non-specialist audiences while maintaining scientific rigor and accuracy. His textbooks and popular articles help create educated public understanding of chemistry that supports technological development and industrial innovation. The modern chemical industry, from pharmaceuticals to petroleum refining to semiconductor manufacturing, remains fundamentally dependent on organizational principles and predictive methods that emerged from Mendeleev's exhausted dream in 1869. Every periodic table hanging in every chemistry classroom in the world represents the legacy of a Russian chemist who fell asleep at his desk and woke up with a solution that revolutionized human understanding of matter. But perhaps the most profound impact of Mendeleev's dream-inspired discovery is its demonstration that systematic organization of knowledge can reveal deeper truths about natural phenomena than isolated observations and random experimentation. His periodic table showed that apparent chaos in chemical behavior actually reflects underlying order that can be discovered through careful analysis and systematic thinking. Mendeleev's success also illustrates how individual scientific breakthroughs can create economic opportunities and technological capabilities that benefit entire societies and civilizations. His dream about element organization didn't just solve a textbook problem, it provided the conceptual framework for understanding matter that enabled countless technological innovations and industrial developments. The continuing relevance of Mendeleev's periodic system, more than 150 years after his prophetic dream, demonstrates the enduring value of fundamental scientific insights that capture essential truths about natural phenomena. Modern periodic tables include over 100 elements, many of them artificially created in laboratory conditions, but they all fit the systematic framework that Mendeleev glimpsed while unconscious at his desk. The legacy of Mendeleev's dream extends beyond scientific knowledge to include important lessons about the value of persistent effort combined with openness to unconventional sources of insight. His willingness to trust his unconscious vision and build upon it through systematic investigation provides a model for how breakthrough discoveries can emerge from the intersection of hard work and intuitive inspiration. Contemporary research into the psychology and neuroscience of scientific creativity often references Mendeleev's experience as a classic example of how unconscious mental processes can solve complex problems that defeat conscious analytical thinking. His dream represents one of the most well-documented cases of sleep-based problem-solving in the history of science. When your dream about organizing chemical elements creates the conceptual foundation for modern chemistry, pharmaceutical industry, and material science while making you wealthy and famous enough to influence government policy and international scientific cooperation, you're dealing with the kind of unconscious insight that demonstrates the incredible problem-solving potential of the human mind during sleep. Dmitri Mendeleev's periodic table dream reminds us that some of the most important scientific breakthroughs emerge not through systematic experimentation or logical analysis, but through dreams that allow our unconscious minds to detect patterns and relationships that conscious thought cannot perceive, creating knowledge that transforms entire fields of human understanding and generates wealth and opportunities for generations of future scientists and innovators. Now let me tell you about Albert Einstein's dream about sledding down a mountain at the speed of light, a vision that led to E equals mx squared, and made him not just the most famous scientist in history, but also quite wealthy from patents, speaking fees, and licensing deals worth millions in today's money. And when I say this dream changed everything, I mean it literally rewrote the laws of physics, transformed our understanding of reality itself, and created the theoretical foundation for everything from nuclear power to GPS satellites that continue to generate billions in economic value today. Picture this, it's around 1905, and Einstein is a 26-year-old patent clerk in Bern, Switzerland, feeling like the most frustrated genius who ever lived. This isn't just about career disappointment. Einstein is dealing with the psychological torture of knowing that he has insights about the nature of reality that could revolutionize physics. But nobody in the academic establishment will take him seriously because he's just a third-class patent examiner who evaluates other people's inventions instead of teaching at a prestigious university. Now, you have to understand the context that makes Einstein's situation so intellectually maddening. He's working at the Swiss Patent Office because he can't get an academic position despite having a physics degree and revolutionary ideas about space, time, and matter. Every day, he sits at his desk reviewing applications for mechanical devices and electrical contraptions, while his mind is wrestling with cosmic questions about the fundamental nature of the universe. Einstein has been obsessing over problems with classical physics that are driving him to the edge of a mental breakdown. Specifically, he can't understand why the speed of light seems to be constant regardless of how fast you're moving when you measure it, which makes absolutely no sense according to Newton's laws of motion and everything that physicists thought they knew about velocity and relative motion, according to classical physics. If you're on a train moving forward at 50 miles per hour and you throw a ball forward at 30 miles per hour, the ball should be moving at 80 miles per hour relative to someone standing on the ground. This is basic addition that works for every object we can observe. But light doesn't behave this way. If you're moving toward a source of light at tremendous speed, the light doesn't appear to be moving faster than if you were standing still. This contradiction between theoretical expectations and experimental observations has been keeping Einstein awake at night, filling notebooks with equations that don't work, and generally making him question whether he's smart enough to solve problems that have defeated much more established physicists. He's probably spending 12-hour days at the patent office, then coming home to work on physics problems until 2 or 3 in the morning, surviving on coffee and sheer intellectual determination. But Einstein is also dealing with intense social and professional isolation that compounds his intellectual frustration. His former classmates from the Federal Polytechnic are getting academic positions and publishing papers, while he's stuck evaluating patents for improved toilet mechanisms and more efficient mousetraps. His professors don't return his letters, his applications for university positions are rejected, and he's starting to wonder if he'll spend his entire life as a failed physicist who works in bureaucracy. The psychological pressure of this situation is enormous. Einstein knows that he's capable of revolutionary insights, but he has no platform for sharing them, no colleagues to discuss them with, and no institutional support for pursuing the kind of theoretical research that obsesses him. He's essentially trying to revolutionize physics in his spare time while working a day job that has nothing to do with his scientific interests. Einstein's approach to the speed of light problem reflects both his theoretical brilliance and his practical frustration. He's been trying every possible mathematical approach to reconcile the constant speed of light with classical mechanics. But every solution he attempts creates new problems that seem to violate other fundamental principles of physics. But then, sometime in early 1905, Einstein has what might be the most important dream in the history of science. In his vision, he's a young boy sledding down a steep, snow-covered mountain in the Swiss Alps. The sled keeps accelerating faster and faster as it descends the slope, reaching speeds that seem impossible for any real-world sledding experience. In his dream, Einstein realizes that his sled is approaching the speed of light minus 186,000 miles per second, the fastest possible velocity in the universe. As he reaches this incredible speed, something extraordinary and impossible begins to happen. The stars in the sky above him start to change colors and appearances, shifting and warping in ways that reveal fundamental truths about the nature of space and time. But here's where Einstein's dream becomes truly revolutionary. As he approaches light speed in his vision, he realizes that time itself is slowing down relative to the rest of the universe. What feels like minutes of sledding to him would appear as hours or days to someone watching from the mountain. And space itself seems to be contracting in the direction he's traveling, as if the mountain and the landscape ahead of him are being compressed like an accordion. In his dream, Einstein understands with perfect clarity that space and time aren't separate, fixed dimensions of reality. They're interconnected and relative to the observer's motion and gravitational environment. The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. The stronger the gravitational field you're in, the more both space and time become distorted. Einstein wakes up from this dream with a complete understanding of what would become his special theory of relativity. The mathematical equations that describe the relationship between energy, mass, and the speed of light, including the famous E equals mc, seem to flow directly from his dream experience of traveling at light speed and observing how space and time behave under these extreme conditions. But Einstein's dream also gives him insights that go beyond special relativity to anticipate his later work on general relativity and the nature of gravity. In his vision, he understands that gravity isn't a force in the traditional sense, but rather the curvature of space-time itself. Massive objects like planets and stars bend the fabric of space and time, creating what we experience as gravitational attraction. The psychological impact of this dream on Einstein is immediate and profound. He goes from feeling like a failed physicist stuck in a dead-end job to knowing that he's discovered the most fundamental secrets about the nature of reality. The confidence that comes from this dream-inspired insight affects every aspect of Einstein's approach to physics and his willingness to challenge established scientific authority. Einstein spends the next several months translating his dream insights into rigorous mathematical formulations that can be tested and verified through experiment and observation. The papers he publishes in 1905, including his work on special relativity, the photoelectric effect, and Brownian motion, establish him as one of the most important physicists of his generation and begin the process of making him wealthy and famous. But the economic implications of Einstein's dream-inspired discoveries extend far beyond his personal income to create entire industries and technological capabilities that continue to generate enormous wealth today. The photoelectric effect, which Einstein explained using quantum theory and which earned him the Nobel Prize, became the foundation for photovoltaic cells, television cameras, image sensors, and countless electronic devices. Einstein's theories about the relationship between mass and energy provided the theoretical framework for nuclear power and nuclear weapons, technologies that have shaped global politics and economics for over 75 years. Every nuclear power plant, every medical imaging device that uses radioactive isotopes, and every application of nuclear physics can trace its origins to Einstein's dream about sledding at the speed of light. The theory of relativity also became essential for the development of GPS satellites, which require precise corrections for both special and general relativistic effects. Without Einstein's insights about how motion and gravity affect time, GPS technology would be inaccurate by several miles, making modern navigation systems impossible and eliminating billions of dollars in economic value from location-based services. Einstein's dream-inspired understanding of space and time also influenced the development of modern telecommunications, particle accelerators, medical imaging technologies, and theoretical frameworks for understanding everything from black holes to the expansion of the universe. His insights continue to guide scientific research and technological development in ways that generate substantial economic value and improve human life. But Einstein's personal wealth from his physics discoveries was also substantial and immediate. After publishing his relativity papers, he quickly became one of the most sought-after lecturers in the world, commanding enormous fees for speaking engagements at universities, scientific conferences, and public events. His dream-inspired theories had made him such a celebrity that institutions would pay thousands of dollars just to have him appear and discuss the nature of space and time. Einstein also earned significant income from his patents related to various inventions and his consulting work with technology companies that wanted to apply relativistic physics to practical problems. His theoretical insights about electromagnetic radiation and quantum effects proved valuable for developing new technologies and fields, ranging from electronics to materials science. When Einstein emigrated to America in 1933 and joined the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton University, he negotiated one of the highest academic salaries in history, equivalent to over $500,000 per year in today's money. His dream about sledding at light speed had literally transformed him from a struggling patent clerk into one of the most well-compensated intellectuals in the world. But Einstein's wealth wasn't just financial. His dream-inspired theories gave him enormous cultural and political influence that he used to advocate for causes he believed in. He became a prominent voice for civil rights, nuclear disarmament, world peace, and rational approaches to international conflict. His scientific fame provided him with a platform for social and political commentary that reached millions of people worldwide. Einstein's later years demonstrate how dream-inspired scientific insights can create lasting wealth and influence that extends far beyond the original discoveries. He continued to work on theoretical physics problems, including his unsuccessful attempt to develop a unified field theory that would explain all physical phenomena through a single mathematical framework. The ongoing relevance of Einstein's dream-inspired physics continues to generate new technologies and economic opportunities more than a century after his original insights. Modern research into quantum computing, space exploration, advanced materials, and fundamental physics all builds upon theoretical foundations that Einstein first glimpsed while dreaming about sledding down a mountain at impossible speeds. Contemporary applications of relativistic physics include technologies that Einstein could never have imagined, but that depend entirely on his dream-inspired understanding of space, time, and energy. Particle accelerators that smash atoms at near-light speeds to create new forms of matter. Medical devices that use relativistic effects for precise diagnosis and treatment. And communications satellites that require relativistic corrections for accurate timing all represent ongoing economic value created by Einstein's sledding dream. The educational and cultural impact of Einstein's theories has also created substantial wealth through textbooks, documentaries, museum exhibits, and popular science books that continue to explain relativistic physics to new generations of students and curious readers. Einstein's image and ideas have become so iconic that they generate licensing revenue and cultural value that extends far beyond academic physics. But perhaps the most profound long-term impact of Einstein's dream is its demonstration that individual scientific insights can reshape entire fields of human knowledge and create economic opportunities that benefit civilization for generations. His vision of space and time as relative and interconnected provided the conceptual framework for understanding the universe that continues to guide scientific research and technological development today. Einstein's approach to translating dream insights into rigorous scientific theories also established important precedents for how breakthrough discoveries can emerge from unconscious mental processes and then be developed into practical applications through systematic research and mathematical analysis. His example shows that the most revolutionary scientific ideas often come from sources that exceed normal logical reasoning. The psychological transformation that Einstein experienced through his dream-inspired success influenced his entire approach to creativity, scientific research, and public engagement with complex ideas. He learned to trust his intuitive insights while also subjecting them to rigorous mathematical and experimental verification, creating a model for scientific innovation that balances inspiration with intellectual discipline. Einstein's later writings about the relationship between scientific discovery and creative inspiration frequently reference the importance of imagination and unconscious mental processes in developing new theoretical frameworks. He argued that the most important scientific breakthroughs often come through sudden insights that seem to emerge from nowhere, but that actually reflect deep unconscious processing of complex information. The business and technological applications of Einstein's dream-inspired physics continue to evolve as new industries emerge that depend on relativistic effects and quantum mechanical principles. Modern developments in artificial intelligence, quantum cryptography, advanced manufacturing, and space technology all build upon theoretical foundations that Einstein first understood through his sledding dream. Einstein's story also demonstrates how individual dreams can create intellectual property and scientific knowledge that continues to generate value long after the original dreamer has died. His theories remain essential for understanding and developing technologies that didn't exist during his lifetime, but that depend entirely on the insights he gained while unconsciously sledding down an imaginary mountain. The international scientific collaboration that grew around Einstein's theories also created new models for how dream-inspired discoveries can be developed and applied through collective research efforts that span multiple countries. institutions, and generations of scientists. His ideas became the foundation for international scientific projects that continue to advance human knowledge and technological capability. Einstein's influence on modern physics education has also created substantial economic value through the development of educational technologies, research programs, and institutional frameworks that train new generations of scientists and engineers. Universities worldwide offer courses and degree programs that focus on relativistic physics and its applications, creating ongoing educational and economic opportunities. The popular culture impact of Einstein's dream-inspired discoveries has also generated significant cultural and economic value through movies, books, art, and other forms of media that explore the implications of relativity theory for human understanding of reality. Einstein's ideas have become part of global cultural literacy in ways that continue to inspire new creative works and educational initiatives. But Einstein's story also illustrates the ongoing mystery of how unconscious mental processes can access insights about the fundamental nature of reality that conscious reasoning cannot achieve through logical analysis alone. His sledding dream provided him with a complete understanding of space and time that anticipated experimental discoveries that wouldn't be made until decades later. Modern neuroscience research into the relationship between sleep, dreams, and scientific creativity has found that many important discoveries emerge through unconscious mental processes that operate during sleep and other altered states of consciousness. Einstein's experience represents one of the most dramatic and well-documented examples of how dreams can provide access to revolutionary scientific insights. The continuing relevance of Einstein's dream-inspired physics for addressing contemporary technological and scientific challenges demonstrates the lasting value of insights that emerge through unconscious mental processes. Problems in quantum computing, space exploration, energy production, and fundamental physics research continue to benefit from theoretical frameworks that Einstein first understood through his dream about sledding at light speed. Einstein's legacy also includes important lessons about the relationship between individual creativity and collective scientific progress. His dream-inspired insights required decades of additional research by thousands of other scientists to fully develop and apply, demonstrating how personal revelations can serve as catalysts for broader scientific and technological advancement. The economic and technological impact of Einstein's sledding dream ultimately extends to virtually every aspect of modern life that depends on precise measurement of time and space, understanding of electromagnetic radiation, or applications of nuclear physics. From the GPS system in your phone to the medical imaging devices in hospitals to the nuclear power plants that generate electricity, Einstein's dream continues to generate value and improve human life over a century after he first experienced it. Contemporary research into the nature of consciousness, creativity, and scientific discovery continues to study Einstein's experience as an example of how breakthrough insights can emerge through unconscious mental processes that exceed normal logical reasoning. His story provides compelling evidence that the human mind has capacities for understanding reality that we're only beginning to appreciate and investigate scientifically. The ongoing development of technologies that depend on relativistic physics ensures that Einstein's dream-inspired insights will continue to generate economic value and scientific progress for generations to come. Advanced applications in quantum computing, space exploration, precision measurement, and fundamental physics research all build upon theoretical foundations that emerged from a young patent clerk's vision of sledding down a mountain at impossible speeds. When your dream about sledding at the speed of light creates the theoretical foundation for nuclear energy, satellite navigation, modern electronics, and our fundamental understanding of space and time, while making you one of the most famous and wealthy scientists in history, you're dealing with the kind of unconscious insight that demonstrates the incredible creative potential of the human mind during sleep. Einstein's sledding dream reminds us that some of the most important scientific discoveries come not through systematic experimentation or logical analysis, but through dreams that allow our unconscious minds to synthesize complex information in ways that conscious thought alone cannot achieve. creating knowledge that transforms entire civilizations and generates wealth and opportunities that continue to benefit humanity generations later. James Watson's dream about a spiral staircase in 1953 led to discovering the double helix structure of DNA, earning him a Nobel Prize and making him wealthy and famous as one of the founders of molecular biology and the biotechnology industry. And when I say this dream changed everything, I mean it literally created the blueprint for understanding life itself and launched an industry that's now worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Picture this, it's early 1953, and 24-year-old James Watson is having what might be the most expensive midlife crisis in scientific history. Except he's way too young for a midlife crisis, so let's call it a quarter-life existential breakdown. Watson is working at Cambridge University with Francis Crick, trying to figure out the structure of DNA deoxyribonucleic acid, which everyone knows contains the instructions for life, but nobody understands how it's actually organized at the molecular level. Now, you have to understand the pressure cooker environment that Watson was working in. This isn't just academic curiosity, this is a full-blown international race to solve one of the biggest mysteries in biology, with competing teams at Cambridge, King's College London, and Caltech all trying to crack the DNA code first. Whoever figures out DNA's structure will become instantly famous, probably win a Nobel Prize, and potentially make a fortune from the biotechnology applications that everyone suspects are possible, but can't develop without understanding how genetic information is stored and transmitted. Watson has been working with X-ray crystallography data provided by Rosalind Franklin at King's College London, data that shows DNA has some kind of helical structure, but the exact arrangement of atoms and molecules is still completely mysterious. Franklin's photo 51 shows a clear X-shaped pattern that indicates a helical structure, but translating these crystallographic patterns into a three-dimensional molecular model requires enormous amounts of trial and error, mathematical analysis, and basically educated guesswork. But Watson is also dealing with the psychological pressure of being the youngest and least experienced member of the DNA research community. Crick is older, more established, and has more theoretical knowledge about molecular structures. Franklin is producing the crucial experimental data that everyone needs to solve the puzzle. Linus Pauling at Caltech is probably the most famous chemist in the world and has already proposed one model for DNA structure that turned out to be wrong, but which demonstrated that he's actively working on the same problem. Watson feels like he's constantly on the verge of being scooped by more experienced and better funded researchers. And he's probably working 18-hour days trying to build physical models of DNA using wire frameworks, metal atoms, and chemical bond representations that can help him visualize how the molecular pieces might fit together. The challenge with DNA is that it's incredibly complex. It contains 4 different types of bases: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, that somehow encode genetic information, plus sugar and phosphate groups that provide structural support, all twisted into a helical shape that has to be stable, enough to preserve genetic information but flexible enough to allow copying and transmission to new cells. Watson has been building model after model, trying different arrangements of these molecular components, but nothing seems to work correctly. Some models are chemically impossible, others don't match Franklin's X-ray data, and still others would be too unstable to function as genetic storage systems. Then, one night in early 1953, Watson has this incredibly vivid dream where he's walking up a spiral staircase in some kind of grand mansion or castle. The staircase is elegant and perfectly proportioned, with 2 spiral banisters that twist around each other as they ascend toward the ceiling. As Watson climbs this dream staircase, he becomes increasingly aware of its architectural beauty and structural elegance. But here's where the dream becomes scientifically revolutionary. Watson realizes that the spiral staircase in his vision provides the perfect metaphor for DNA's molecular structure. The 2 banisters represent the sugar phosphate backbones that provide structural support for the molecule, while the steps connecting them represent the base pairs that carry genetic information. In his dream, Watson can see exactly how the 4 DNA bases would pair up to form the steps of this molecular staircase. Adenine would always pair with thymine, and guanine would always pair with cytosine, creating complementary base pairs that are exactly the right size and shape to fit between the two helical backbones. Watson wakes up from this dream with his heart racing because he immediately realizes that his unconscious mind has solved the DNA puzzle that has been defeating him for months. The double helix structure explains everything: how genetic information is stored in the sequence of base pairs, how it's copied by separating the two strands and building complementary copies, and how it's transmitted to new cells through DNA replication during cell division. He rushes to the laboratory early the next morning and starts building a physical model based on his dream insights. Using metal rods, chemical bond connectors, and atomic representations, Watson constructs a double helix structure that matches both his dream vision and Franklin's X-ray crystallography data. When Crick arrives at the lab and sees Watson's new model, he immediately recognizes that they've solved one of the most important problems in biology. The double helix structure is elegant, chemically stable, and explains all the experimental observations that had been puzzling researchers for years. Watson and Crick published their DNA structure paper in Nature in April 1953, and it becomes one of the most important scientific publications in history. Their discovery earns them the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1962, along with Maurice Wilkins from King's College London. Rosalind Franklin had died by then and couldn't share the prize, which remains a controversial aspect of this discovery. But the economic impact of Watson's dream-inspired breakthrough extends far beyond academic recognition to create entirely new industries and technological capabilities. Understanding DNA's structure provided the foundation for genetic engineering, biotechnology, pharmaceutical development, and medical applications that are now worth hundreds of billions of dollars globally. Watson's discovery enabled the development of recombinant DNA technology, which allows scientists to modify genetic sequences and produce proteins in bacterial cultures. This became the foundation for modern pharmaceutical manufacturing, where human insulin, growth hormones, and countless other medications are produced using genetically modified organisms. The biotechnology industry that emerged from Watson's DNA insights includes companies like Genentech, Amgen, and Biogen that have become enormously valuable by developing gene-based therapies and diagnostic tools. Watson himself earned substantial income from consulting work, patent licensing, and advisory positions with biotech companies that wanted to apply DNA technology to practical problems. Watson also became one of the most highly paid scientific lecturers in the world, commanding enormous fees for speaking engagements at universities, medical conferences, and industry events. His dream-inspired discovery had made him such a celebrity that institutions would pay tens of thousands of dollars just to have him appear and discuss the implications of genetic research. The Human Genome Project, which mapped the complete sequence of human DNA, was directly enabled by Watson's structural insights and represented a multi-billion-dollar international research effort that has created new opportunities for personalized medicine, genetic testing, and therapeutic development. Modern applications of DNA technology include everything from criminal forensics and paternity testing to agricultural biotechnology and environmental remediation. Every DNA test, every genetically modified crop, and every gene therapy treatment depends on understanding the double helix structure that Watson first glimpsed in his dream about climbing a spiral staircase. But Watson's success also came with significant personal and professional challenges. His later career was marked by controversial statements about intelligence, race, and genetics that damaged his reputation and led to his removal from leadership positions at scientific institutions. His example demonstrates how scientific brilliance doesn't necessarily translate into wisdom about social and ethical issues. The psychological transformation that Watson experienced from his dream-inspired discovery affected his entire approach to scientific research and public engagement. He became more confident about pursuing ambitious research projects and more willing to make bold claims about the implications of genetic research for human health and behavior. Watson's later involvement in establishing the human genome project and advocating for large-scale genetic research demonstrated how his dream-inspired insights continued to guide his thinking about the future of biology and medicine. He understood that discovering DNA's structure was just the beginning of a much larger revolution in how humans understand and manipulate genetic information. The educational impact of Watson's DNA discovery has shaped how biology is taught throughout the world. Every high school and college biology course includes instruction about the double helix structure, making Watson's dream insight one of the most widely taught concepts in scientific education. Contemporary genetic research continues to build upon the foundation that Watson's dream provided, developing new technologies like CRISPR gene editing, synthetic biology, and precision medicine that are creating new economic opportunities and therapeutic possibilities. But Watson's story also illustrates the complex relationship between individual scientific achievement and collective research efforts. While his dream provided the crucial insight that solved the DNA structure problem, the discovery also depended on experimental data from Rosalind Franklin, theoretical contributions from Francis Crick, and decades of previous research by countless other scientists. The ongoing development of genetic technologies ensures that Watson's dream-inspired discovery will continue to generate economic value and scientific progress for generations to come. Advanced applications in gene therapy, personalized medicine, synthetic biology, and genetic engineering all build upon the double helix foundation that emerged from his spiral staircase vision. Modern neuroscience research into creativity and scientific discovery often references Watson's experience as an example of how unconscious mental processes can solve complex problems that defeat conscious analytical thinking. His dream provided him with a structural metaphor that his conscious mind had been unable to visualize despite months of systematic effort. When your dream about climbing a spiral staircase creates the conceptual foundation for modern genetics, biotechnology, and personalized medicine while making you one of the most famous scientists of the 20th century, you're dealing with the kind of unconscious insight that demonstrates how individual creativity can reshape entire fields of human knowledge and create industries that continue to benefit millions of people worldwide. James Watson's DNA dream reminds us that some of the most important scientific breakthroughs come through metaphorical thinking and unconscious pattern recognition that allows our minds to see structural relationships that logical analysis alone cannot reveal, creating knowledge that becomes the foundation for technological revolutions that transform how humans understand and manipulate the fundamental processes of life itself. Paul McCartney woke up one morning in 1965 with the complete melody for Yesterday, playing in his head a dream song that became one of the most covered tracks in music history and earned him millions in royalties over 5 decades. And when I say this dream changed everything, I mean it literally created one of the most lucrative compositions in popular music and demonstrated how unconscious creativity can generate wealth that continues to grow for generations. Picture this, it's early 1965, and 22-year-old Paul McCartney is living in a small attic bedroom at his girlfriend Jane Asher's family house in London, dealing with the psychological pressure of being one quarter of the most famous band in the world, while still trying to figure out how to write songs that don't sound like every other rock and roll tune on the radio. The Beatles have already conquered America, released several albums, and become international superstars, but Paul is obsessing over the challenge of creating more sophisticated music that could prove they're serious artists rather than just teenage heartthrobs. Now, you have to understand the creative pressure cooker that Paul was working in during 1965. The Beatles were expected to constantly produce new material that was better than their previous work, different from what other bands were doing, and commercially successful enough to maintain their position as the most popular musical act in the world. Every song they released was scrutinized by millions of fans, music critics, and industry professionals who were waiting to see if the Beatles could evolve beyond their early rock and roll roots. Paul has been experimenting with more complex melodies, chord progressions, and song structures that reflect his growing interest in classical music, French chanson, and sophisticated pop songwriting. He's studying composers like Bach and Ravel, learning piano pieces that challenge his musical understanding, and trying to incorporate these influences into Beatles songs without losing the energy and accessibility that made them popular. But Paul is also dealing with the internal band dynamics that come from being part of a creative partnership with John Lennon, who has his own strong opinions about musical direction and artistic credibility. The Lennon-McCartney songwriting team is incredibly productive, but it's also competitive, with both writers trying to contribute songs that will be chosen for Beatles albums and potentially become hit singles. The pressure to write constantly and produce hits on demand is unlike anything that most musicians experience. The Beatles are releasing multiple albums per year, touring constantly, and expected to generate new material, even while dealing with the chaos of Beatlemania and the demands of international celebrity. Paul has been waking up early most mornings to work on songs before the day's Beatles activities begin, using the quiet time to experiment with melodies and chord progressions on the piano that Jane, Asher's family, keeps in their living room. He's developed a routine of getting up around 6 or 7 a.m. and playing softly so he doesn't wake the rest of the household. But one morning in early 1965, Paul wakes up with something completely different, a full melody playing in his head like a perfectly produced recording. This isn't just a musical fragment or a catchy phrase, but a complete song structure with verse, bridge, and a haunting melodic line that seems both familiar and entirely new. The melody that appeared in Paul's dream is unlike anything the Beatles had recorded before. It's melancholy, sophisticated, and built around a descending bass line that creates a sense of sadness and nostalgia that contrasts sharply with the upbeat rock and roll that had made them famous. The harmonic progression is more complex than typical pop songs, incorporating jazz-influenced chord changes that reflect Paul's growing musical sophistication. Paul immediately gets up and goes to the piano, playing the melody exactly as he heard it in his dream. The song seems to flow effortlessly from his fingers, as if he's been playing it for years, rather than just receiving it through unconscious inspiration. Every note feels inevitable and perfectly placed, creating a musical logic that he couldn't have constructed through conscious composition. But here's where the story gets psychologically fascinating. Paul is so convinced that he must have unconsciously plagiarized this melody that he spends weeks playing it for other musicians, music industry professionals, and anyone who might recognize it as an existing song. He's terrified that he's accidentally stolen someone else's composition and that releasing it would result in embarrassing lawsuits and damage to his reputation as a songwriter. Paul plays the melody for his Beatles bandmates, for George Martin, their producer, for other musicians in London's rock scene, and for older music industry professionals who might recognize it as a standard or show tune from previous decades. He describes the experience as being haunting because the melody feels so familiar that he's convinced it must exist somewhere in recorded music history. But nobody recognizes the melody. Everyone who hears it agrees that it's beautiful and memorable, but no one can identify it as an existing song. Gradually, Paul begins to accept that his unconscious mind has composed an entirely original piece of music that somehow feels like a classic song despite being completely new. The process of turning this dream melody into a finished song takes several months because Paul struggles to find lyrics that match the sophisticated melancholy of the music. The melody seems to demand words that are more personal and introspective than typical Beatles songs, dealing with themes of loss, regret, and emotional vulnerability that were unusual for pop music in 1965. Paul initially gives the song placeholder lyrics about scrambled eggs because the melody fits those words. But he knows that the final version needs something more serious and emotionally resonant. He experiments with various lyrical approaches before settling on Yesterday, a song about lost love and the pain of remembering better times that perfectly captures the wistful quality of his dream melody. The recording of Yesterday also represents a departure from typical Beatles practice because Paul performs it alone with just acoustic guitar and orchestral accompaniment, rather than as a full band arrangement. This solo approach emphasizes the intimate, personal quality of the song and allows the dream melody to be featured without competing instrumental elements. When Yesterday is released as part of the Help album in 1965, it becomes an immediate classic that demonstrates the Beatles' ability to create sophisticated pop music that appeals to both teenage fans and adult audiences. The song reaches #1 on charts worldwide and establishes Paul as a songwriter capable of creating deeply emotional music that transcends typical rock and roll boundaries. But the long-term financial impact of Paul's dream song is where the story becomes truly remarkable. Yesterday has been covered by over 2,200 different artists, making it one of the most recorded songs in music history. Every cover version generates royalty payments for Paul as the songwriter, creating a revenue stream that has continued for over 5 decades. The list of artists who have recorded Yesterday includes everyone from Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley to Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin, spanning multiple genres and generations of musicians. Each cover version introduces the song to new audiences and generates additional royalty income that compounds over time. The song has also been featured in countless movies, television shows, commercials, and other media productions, each generating additional licensing fees that contribute to Paul's ongoing wealth. Yesterday has become one of the most licensed songs in entertainment history, providing background music for romantic scenes, nostalgic montages, and emotional moments in dramatic productions. Paul's performance royalties from Yesterday continue to accumulate every time the song is played on radio, television, or streaming services anywhere in the world. Modern digital music platforms have actually increased these royalty payments by making the song available to global audiences through services like Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. The psychological impact of creating such a successful and enduring song affected Paul's entire approach to songwriting and his confidence about pursuing more ambitious musical projects. Yesterday proved to him that his unconscious mind was a reliable source of musical inspiration and that he should pay attention to melodies and ideas that emerge through dreams and intuitive processes. This experience convinced Paul to develop more systematic approaches to capturing musical ideas that came through unconscious inspiration. He began keeping recording equipment near his bed and piano, so he could immediately document melodies that appeared in dreams or during the transitional state between sleeping and waking. Paul's success with Yesterday also influenced his relationship with classical music and his later projects that incorporated orchestral arrangements, complex harmonies, and sophisticated musical structures. The song demonstrated that Beatles audiences were receptive to more ambitious, musical content that went beyond traditional rock and roll formulas. The song's success contributed to Paul's reputation as the most commercially minded member of the Beatles, someone who understood how to create music that was both artistically sophisticated and financially successful. This reputation helped him negotiate better publishing deals and maintain control over his musical catalog throughout his career. Yesterday also became a template for Paul's later solo work, demonstrating his ability to create intimate personal songs that showcased his melodic gifts and emotional range. Many of his most successful post-Beatles songs follow similar patterns of combining sophisticated melodies with accessible emotional content. The educational impact of Yesterday has made it one of the most studied songs in popular music, analyzed in music theory courses, songwriting workshops, and academic programs throughout the world. Students learn about melody construction, harmonic progression, and emotional expression by studying the techniques that Paul used in this dream-inspired composition. Contemporary songwriters continue to reference Yesterday as an example of how unconscious creativity can produce musical ideas that exceed what conscious composition techniques alone can achieve. The song has inspired countless musicians to pay more attention to their dreams and intuitive musical impulses. But Yesterday also demonstrates the ongoing mystery of musical creativity and the relationship between conscious craftsmanship and unconscious inspiration. Paul's dream provided him with a complete melody that he could never have constructed through deliberate compositional techniques, yet it perfectly matched his musical sensibilities and emotional expression. Modern neuroscience research into creativity and musical cognition often references Paul's experience as an example of how the sleeping brain can access musical patterns and emotional content that conscious thinking cannot generate. His dream melody represents one of the most dramatic examples of unconscious musical creativity in popular music history. The international impact of Yesterday has made it a cultural touchstone that transcends musical genres and geographical boundaries. The song has been translated into dozens of languages and adapted for different cultural contexts while maintaining its essential emotional impact and melodic beauty. The song's influence on popular music extends beyond its commercial success to include its role in establishing new standards for sophisticated pop songwriting that influenced countless other musicians and composers. Yesterday helped legitimize popular music as a serious artistic medium worthy of critical attention and academic study. Pole's willingness to release such a personal and vulnerable song also contributed to changing expectations about what popular music could express emotionally. Yesterday helped establish the acceptability of sadness, introspection, and emotional complexity in pop songs that had previously been expected to be primarily upbeat and optimistic. The technological changes in music distribution and consumption over the past 5 decades have actually increased the value and reach of Yesterday, demonstrating how dream-inspired creativity can create assets that continue to generate wealth and cultural impact across multiple generations and technological platforms. Contemporary music streaming data shows that Yesterday continues to attract millions of listeners worldwide, with new generations discovering the song through digital platforms and social media recommendations. Pole's Dream melody continues to find new audiences and generate new revenue streams more than half a century after its creation. The legacy of Paul's Dream song ultimately demonstrates how unconscious creativity can produce cultural artifacts that achieve both artistic and commercial success while continuing to influence and inspire new creative work generations after their original creation. When your dream melody becomes one of the most covered songs in music history and continues to generate substantial royalty income 50 years later while influencing countless other musicians and establishing new standards for popular songwriting, you're dealing with the kind of unconscious creativity that demonstrates the incredible value of paying attention to inspiration that emerges through dreams and intuitive processes. Paul McCartney's Yesterday Dream reminds us that some of the most enduring and profitable creative work emerges not through systematic composition techniques but through unconscious inspiration that provides complete artistic visions that feel both familiar and entirely new, creating cultural products that continue to generate wealth and emotional impact across multiple generations of audiences worldwide. Now let's slow down a bit and explore the fascinating historical and scientific framework behind fortune-making dreams. Because once you understand how different cultures throughout history have approached dream inspiration, and what modern science tells us about the relationship between sleep and creativity, tonight's stories stop seeming like random, miraculous events and start looking like windows into fundamental aspects of human consciousness and economic innovation. The thing about fortune-making dreams is that they represent one of the most consistent and universal phenomena in human economic history, appearing in every culture, every historical period, and every type of creative endeavor we know about. From the earliest Mesopotamian business contracts that mention divine dreams about profitable ventures to contemporary Silicon Valley entrepreneurs who credit breakthrough innovations to insights received during sleep, human beings have consistently reported that their most lucrative ideas come through unconscious inspiration rather than systematic planning. What makes this universality particularly fascinating is that fortune-making dreams seem to follow remarkably similar patterns across completely different cultures and time periods. Whether you're looking at ancient Egyptian architects who designed profitable pyramid construction techniques, medieval Islamic mathematicians who developed lucrative commercial calculation methods, or modern tech entrepreneurs who created billion-dollar companies, the basic structure of dream-inspired innovation remains surprisingly consistent, suggesting that there might be fundamental aspects of human consciousness and brain function that make us naturally receptive to creative economic insights during sleep. Let's start with ancient Mesopotamia, where some of the oldest recorded business dreams in human history were carefully documented on cuneiform tablets that archaeologists have been discovering and translating for over a century. Mesopotamian cultures, including the Sumerians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, developed incredibly sophisticated approaches to dream-inspired business, innovation that recognized the economic potential of unconscious creativity while also establishing practical frameworks for evaluating and implementing ideas that emerged during sleep. Mesopotamian dream interpretation distinguished between several different types of economically relevant dreams, including visions where gods provided specific business advice, dreams that revealed profitable trade routes or commercial opportunities, and nocturnal insights about manufacturing techniques or agricultural innovations that could generate substantial wealth. They understood that not all dreams were economically significant, but they also recognized that certain types of dream experiences could provide access to practical knowledge that exceeded normal business analysis and market research. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the world's oldest literary works, includes several crucial business-related dreams that guide the hero's economic decisions and provide him with practical advantages in trade negotiations and resource management. These dreams aren't just narrative devices. They reflect genuine Mesopotamian beliefs about how successful entrepreneurs could access supernatural guidance for making profitable decisions and avoiding costly mistakes. Mesopotamian merchants regularly consulted dream interpreters before making important trade decisions, understanding that divine guidance received through dreams could provide crucial information about market conditions, political stability in distant regions, and the reliability of potential business partners. The famous Code of Hammurabi includes provisions for contracts based on dream revelations, suggesting that Mesopotamian legal systems recognized dream-inspired business decisions as legitimate and enforceable agreements. But Mesopotamian culture also developed careful criteria for distinguishing between authentic, economically valuable dreams and ordinary psychological experiences that might lead to poor business decisions. They understood that not every dream about wealth or commerce represented reliable guidance, and they created elaborate classification systems for identifying the specific characteristics that indicated genuine divine communication about profitable opportunities. Ancient Egypt took dream-inspired business innovation even further, developing what might be the most sophisticated ancient system for translating nocturnal visions into practical economic value: Egyptian dream interpretation texts, some of which survive on papyrus scrolls that are over 4,000 years old, reveal incredibly detailed approaches to analyzing business-related dreams and applying their guidance to everything from architectural projects and agricultural planning to international trade and manufacturing innovations. Egyptian culture understood business dreams as direct communications from gods like Thoth and Pth, who were specifically associated with craftsmanship, innovation, and commercial success. These divine figures were believed to provide sleeping entrepreneurs with technical knowledge, market insights, and strategic guidance that could create enormous wealth for individuals and benefit entire communities through job creation and economic development. The Egyptians also developed elaborate dream incubation practices specifically designed to facilitate business-related revelations. Entrepreneurs and craftsmen could visit temple complexes, where they would sleep in special chambers designed to promote dreams about profitable innovations, new product designs, or solutions to manufacturing challenges that were limiting their economic success. Egyptian medical and technical papyri include detailed instructions for interpreting business dreams and translating their insights into practical applications. These documents reveal that ancient Egyptian entrepreneurs understood the relationship between unconscious creativity and conscious implementation, recognizing that dream inspiration needed to be combined with systematic planning and skilled execution to generate lasting economic value. But Egyptian dream interpretation also recognized the social and political implications of business, innovations that emerged through dream inspiration. Dreams that revealed new technologies or commercial opportunities needed to be evaluated, not just for their profit potential, but also for their effects on employment, social stability, and the balance of economic power within Egyptian society. Ancient Greek culture approached fortune-making dreams through philosophical frameworks that emphasized their psychological and intellectual significance rather than just their practical economic value. Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle wrote extensively about dreams as sources of creative inspiration that could lead to innovations in art, science, technology, and business that would benefit both individuals and society as a whole. The Greek concept of techne, skilled craftsmanship that combined practical knowledge with creative inspiration, provided a theoretical framework for understanding how dream-inspired innovations could create both economic value and cultural advancement. Greek entrepreneurs and artisans were encouraged to pay attention to their dreams as potential sources of technical insights that could improve their products, increase their efficiency, and expand their markets. Greek mystery schools and philosophical academies included instruction about cultivating and interpreting dreams that could provide practical guidance for various professions and economic activities. These educational programs recognize that creative inspiration often emerged through unconscious mental processes that operated during sleep, and they developed systematic approaches to enhancing and directing this natural capacity for innovation. The Greek tradition of divine madness, creative inspiration that seemed to exceed normal human capabilities, included recognition that some of the most profitable innovations emerged through dream experiences that provided entrepreneurs with insights they couldn't have developed through conscious analysis alone. This cultural acceptance of non-rational sources of innovation created an environment where dream-inspired business ideas were taken seriously and supported through investment and development resources. But Greek culture also developed critical approaches to evaluating dream-inspired business, ideas that emphasize the importance of testing innovative concepts through practical experimentation and market analysis. Greek philosophers understood that creative inspiration needed to be balanced with rational evaluation to determine which dream insights were genuinely valuable and which were merely wishful thinking or psychological projection. Roman culture inherited and expanded upon Greek approaches to dream-inspired innovation while also developing distinctively Roman attitudes toward the practical application and commercialization of creative insights received during sleep. Roman entrepreneurs were particularly skilled at translating dream inspiration into large-scale business enterprises that could generate wealth through efficient organization, strategic marketing, and systematic expansion into new markets. Roman engineering and architectural innovations often emerged through dream experiences that provided technical solutions to construction challenges, design problems, and logistical difficulties that exceeded the conscious problem-solving abilities of individual engineers and architects. The Romans developed systematic approaches to documenting and testing these dream-inspired technical insights, creating some of the first formal processes for converting unconscious creativity into practical engineering applications. Roman commercial law included provisions for partnerships and contracts based on dream revelations, recognizing that innovative business ideas often emerged through non-rational sources that nonetheless produced valuable economic opportunities. Roman legal scholars developed sophisticated frameworks for evaluating the validity and enforceability of business agreements that were based on dream-inspired insights about market opportunities or technical innovations. But Roman culture also recognized the competitive advantages that could be gained through superior dream interpretation and creative inspiration. Roman military and political leaders regularly consulted dream interpreters to gain insights about economic conditions in conquered territories, the reliability of local business partners, and opportunities for establishing profitable enterprises in new regions. The Roman emphasis on practical results and measurable outcomes created cultural pressure to demonstrate that dream-inspired business ideas could actually generate sustainable wealth rather than just temporary excitement or speculative investment. This focus on empirical validation helped Roman entrepreneurs develop more sophisticated approaches to testing and refining their unconscious insights through systematic business experimentation. Medieval Islamic culture developed perhaps the most theoretically sophisticated approaches to understanding and applying dream-inspired business innovation in recorded history. Islamic scholars created elaborate frameworks for analyzing the relationship between spiritual inspiration and practical economic activity, recognizing that creative insights received during sleep could serve both individual profit and collective social benefit. Islamic concepts like ilham, divine inspiration that could include practical guidance, about business and technical matters provided theological justification for taking dream-inspired innovations seriously, while also establishing criteria for distinguishing between authentic spiritual guidance and ordinary, psychological experiences that might lead to poor business decisions. Medieval Islamic merchants and craftsmen developed systematic approaches to cultivating and interpreting business-related dreams that included specific prayer practices, dietary recommendations, and sleep environments designed to enhance receptivity to profitable insights. These techniques were integrated into broader Islamic frameworks for spiritual development that emphasized the connection between personal righteousness and economic success. Islamic commercial law recognized dream-inspired business innovations as legitimate sources of intellectual property and competitive advantage, while also establishing ethical guidelines for ensuring that dream-inspired wealth creation served broader social purposes rather than just individual enrichment. This legal framework encouraged innovation while also promoting social responsibility and community benefit. The Islamic emphasis on education and knowledge preservation created environments where dream-inspired innovations could be systematically studied, documented, and transmitted to future generations of entrepreneurs and inventors. Islamic libraries and universities maintained extensive collections of texts about dream interpretation, creative inspiration, and the practical application of unconscious insights to business and technical challenges. But Islamic culture also developed critical approaches to evaluating dream-inspired business ideas that emphasize the importance of conforming to ethical principles, community benefit, and sustainable economic development rather than just short-term profit maximization. This moral framework helped Islamic entrepreneurs avoid the potential negative consequences of unconstrained wealth pursuit while still encouraging innovation and economic growth. Medieval European culture initially approached dream-inspired business innovation with suspicion and caution, reflecting Christian theological concerns about the spiritual implications of seeking wealth through supernatural means. Early medieval European society was largely agricultural and feudal, with limited opportunities for entrepreneurial innovation and skeptical attitudes toward individual wealth accumulation. But by the later medieval period, particularly in Italian city-states and northern European trading centers, Christian scholars and merchants began developing more positive approaches to dream-inspired innovation that recognized creative inspiration as a divine gift that could serve both individual prosperity and community welfare. Medieval guilds, professional associations that controlled various crafts and trades, developed systematic approaches to evaluating and implementing technical innovations that emerged through dream experiences. These organizations recognized that creative insights often came through unconscious inspiration rather than formal training, and they created frameworks for testing and validating dream-inspired improvements to manufacturing techniques, product designs, and business methods. The medieval university system, which emerged in European cities during the 12th and 13th centuries, included instruction about the relationship between divine inspiration and practical knowledge that influenced how educated Europeans understood the potential value of dream-inspired innovation. University scholars developed theoretical frameworks for analyzing creative inspiration that combined Christian theology with Aristotelian philosophy and practical observation. Medieval European merchant families, particularly in Italy, where banking and international trade were becoming increasingly sophisticated, developed private approaches to dream interpretation and business inspiration that helped them identify profitable opportunities and avoid costly mistakes in their commercial ventures. These families often maintained detailed records of dream experiences and their practical outcomes, creating informal databases of information about the relationship between unconscious inspiration and economic success. But medieval European culture also developed cautionary approaches to dream-inspired wealth creation that emphasized the moral responsibilities that came with economic success and the importance of using dream-inspired innovations to benefit broader communities rather than just individual families or organizations. Renaissance European culture experienced a renewed interest in dream-inspired innovation as artists, scientists, inventors, and entrepreneurs began recognizing creative inspiration as a crucial component of the broader cultural and economic transformation that was reshaping European society during the 5th, 10th, and 16th centuries. Renaissance humanism provided philosophical frameworks for understanding dream inspiration as a natural human capacity that could be cultivated and directed toward beneficial purposes rather than just a mysterious supernatural phenomenon that operated beyond human understanding or control. This intellectual shift encouraged more systematic approaches to developing and applying unconscious creativity for practical economic purposes. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and other Renaissance innovators documented their use of dream inspiration for solving technical problems, developing new artistic techniques, and creating innovations that generated both cultural value and economic opportunities. Their example influenced broader Renaissance culture to view dream-inspired creativity as a legitimate and valuable source of practical innovation. Renaissance banking families like the Medici developed sophisticated approaches to identifying and funding dream-inspired innovations that showed potential for generating substantial returns on investment. These early venture capitalists understood that creative insights often emerged through non-rational sources, and they developed evaluation criteria for distinguishing between genuinely valuable innovations and speculative fantasies. The Renaissance emphasis on individual achievement and personal advancement created cultural environments where dream-inspired entrepreneurs could pursue innovative ideas without facing the social constraints that had limited business innovation during earlier historical periods. This cultural shift contributed to the emergence of more systematic approaches to converting unconscious creativity into practical economic value. But Renaissance culture also developed increasingly sophisticated approaches to evaluating and testing dream-inspired innovations through empirical observation, mathematical analysis, and systematic experimentation that established higher standards for proving the practical value of creative insights regardless of their source. The scientific revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries initially created tension between rational approaches to understanding natural phenomena and traditional acceptance of dream-inspired innovation. Early modern scientists emphasized systematic observation, mathematical analysis, and controlled experimentation as the proper methods for developing reliable knowledge about the natural world. But as the scientific revolution progressed, researchers began recognizing that many important scientific discoveries had emerged through creative insights that exceeded purely rational analysis, including numerous cases where crucial breakthroughs had appeared to scientists during dreams or other altered states of consciousness. This recognition led to more nuanced approaches to understanding the relationship between rational methodology and creative inspiration. Isaac Newton, Johannes Kepler, and other pioneering scientists documented instances where mathematical insights, theoretical frameworks, and experimental designs had emerged through dream experiences that provided solutions to problems they couldn't solve through conscious analysis alone. Their examples influenced broader scientific culture to recognize unconscious creativity as a legitimate complement to systematic rational methodology. The development of capitalism during the early modern period created new economic frameworks for evaluating and funding dream-inspired innovations. Emerging financial institutions, stock markets, and patent systems provided mechanisms for converting creative insights into measurable economic value, while also establishing legal protections for innovators who wanted to profit from their unconscious inspirations. Early modern entrepreneurs developed increasingly sophisticated approaches to translating dream-inspired ideas into practical business ventures through systematic market research, technical development, and strategic planning that combined creative inspiration with rational business analysis. But the scientific revolution also established higher standards for evaluating the practical value of any innovation, regardless of its source, through empirical testing and measurable results rather than just theoretical plausibility or traditional authority. The Industrial Revolution of the 18th and 19th centuries created unprecedented opportunities for dream-inspired innovations to generate enormous wealth through mechanized manufacturing, transportation systems, and communication technologies that could benefit from any source of creative insight that led to practical improvements. Industrial capitalism provided new financial mechanisms for funding innovative projects while also creating competitive pressures that rewarded entrepreneurs who could develop superior products, processes, or business methods regardless of how they discovered these innovations. This economic environment was particularly favorable to dream-inspired creativity because it emphasized practical results rather than conventional approaches to problem solving. Many of the most important industrial innovations emerged through dream experiences that provided inventors with insights about mechanical principles, manufacturing techniques, and product designs that they couldn't have developed through conscious analysis alone. The steam engine, textile machinery, and railroad technologies all benefited from creative insights that had emerged through unconscious inspiration during sleep. The patent system that developed during the Industrial Revolution provided legal frameworks for protecting and profiting from dream-inspired innovations, while also encouraging inventors to document and share their creative insights in ways that could benefit broader technological development. Industrial entrepreneurs developed increasingly systematic approaches to cultivating and applying creative inspiration through improved working. CONDITIONS, educational programs, and research facilities that supported both conscious problem-solving and unconscious creativity as complementary approaches to innovation and business development. But the Industrial Revolution also established competitive pressures that required dream-inspired innovations to prove their practical value through market success. Rather than just theoretical elegance or creative novelty, modern scientific research has provided fascinating insights into the neurological and psychological mechanisms that might underlie dream-inspired business innovation. Contemporary neuroscience has identified specific brain regions and neural networks that become active during creative problem-solving and entrepreneurial thinking, including areas associated with pattern recognition, risk assessment, and long-term planning. Brain imaging studies of entrepreneurs and inventors have found that creative insight often involves increased connectivity between normally separate neural networks, allowing the brain to combine information from different domains in novel ways that can lead to innovative solutions and business opportunities. This research suggests that dream-inspired innovation might result from enhanced neural connectivity that occurs during REM sleep. Research on sleep and creativity has found that people who get adequate REM sleep perform significantly better on creative, problem-solving tasks and entrepreneurial challenges than those who are sleep-deprived. The brain apparently uses dream states to consolidate information from different sources and combine them in novel ways that can lead to innovative insights and business ideas. The phenomenon of incubation, where solutions to difficult problems emerge after periods of rest rather than active work, has been extensively studied by cognitive psychologists, who have found that unconscious mental processes continue working on challenges even when conscious attention is directed elsewhere. Dreams appear to be one mechanism through which the unconscious mind can generate creative solutions to business and technical problems. Contemporary neuroscience has also identified specific factors that seem to enhance the likelihood of having productive, creative dreams that can lead to practical innovations. These include sustained focus on particular challenges before sleep, emotional investment in finding solutions, and maintaining consistent sleep schedules that maximize REM sleep duration and quality. Studies of successful entrepreneurs and inventors have found that many innovative business leaders regularly use their dreams as sources of inspiration and problem solving. Some technology companies now encourage employees to keep dream journals and share creative insights that emerge during sleep. recognizing that dreams can be valuable sources of innovation and competitive advantage. The economic value of dream-inspired innovation extends far beyond individual success stories, to include entire industries and technological revolutions that emerged from insights received during sleep. The modern computer industry, biotechnology sector, and renewable energy fields all include numerous companies and technologies that can trace their origins to discoveries that began as dreams. Contemporary research has also revealed interesting patterns in how different types of creative dreams correlate with different forms of business innovation. Technical and engineering dreams often involve visual imagery and spatial reasoning. While business strategy and marketing dreams frequently include narrative elements and social interactions that can be translated into practical commercial applications. The cultural and economic factors that support dream-inspired innovation have also been studied extensively. Societies that value creativity, provide resources for experimentation, and reward innovative thinking tend to produce more dream-inspired discoveries than cultures that emphasize conformity and traditional approaches to problem solving. Educational institutions and business organizations are beginning to incorporate understanding of dream creativity into their training programs, teaching people how to enhance their capacity for innovative dreaming and how to recognize and act on insights that emerge during sleep. The relationship between individual dream experiences and collective economic development continues to be an important area of research. As scientists and economists try to understand how personal creativity translates into broader social and technological progress that benefits entire communities and civilizations. But perhaps most importantly, modern research suggests that the ability to benefit from dream inspiration isn't limited to special individuals with unusual talents. The capacity for creative dreaming appears to be a normal feature of human consciousness that can be cultivated through appropriate sleep habits, problem-solving approaches, and openness to unconventional sources of insight. Contemporary business schools and entrepreneurship programs are beginning to include instruction about the role of unconscious creativity in innovation and business development, recognizing that dream-inspired insights can provide competitive advantages and creative solutions that complement systematic analysis and traditional business planning. The modern startup culture, particularly in technology centers like Silicon Valley, has created environments where dream-inspired innovation is actively encouraged and supported through funding mechanisms, mentorship programs, and business incubators that help entrepreneurs translate creative insights into practical commercial ventures. When we understand dreams as natural sources of innovation and problem-solving, rather than just random mental activity, we can appreciate their role in economic development and technological advancement that has shaped the modern world in ways that continue to generate wealth and improve living standards globally. The historical and scientific understanding of fortune-making dreams ultimately reveals them as bridges between individual creativity and collective economic progress, between personal inspiration and practical business development, between unconscious insight and conscious implementation that demonstrates the profound connection between human consciousness and economic innovation. The patterns we see across cultures and centuries suggest that dream-inspired business innovation represents a fundamental aspect of human economic behavior rather than just occasional lucky accidents, and that societies that learn to cultivate and apply this natural capacity for unconscious creativity may have significant advantages in developing new technologies, creating wealth, and solving complex problems that affect entire civilizations. The relationship between sleeping minds and economic progress continues to be one of the most fascinating and practically important areas of research into human consciousness, creativity, and the mysterious ways that individual insights can reshape entire industries and create opportunities that benefit millions of people worldwide. Understanding how dreams contribute to business innovation also provides insights into the nature of entrepreneurship itself, suggesting that successful business creation often requires combining rational planning with intuitive insights that emerge through unconscious mental processes during sleep and other altered states of consciousness. the ongoing development of technologies that depend on creative problem-solving and innovative thinking ensures that dream-inspired insights will continue to play important roles in economic development and wealth creation for generations to come, as human consciousness continues to serve as the ultimate source of the creative ideas that drive technological progress and business innovation. Let me share some truly obscure facts about fortune-making dreams that most people have never heard, but that reveal fascinating insights about the hidden connections between sleeping minds, economic innovation, and the mysterious ways that individual nocturnal visions have created wealth and opportunities that continue to influence global commerce in ways that challenge our basic assumptions about how breakthrough ideas actually emerge and spread through human civilization. During the late 1800s, there existed a secret network of inventors and entrepreneurs throughout Europe and America who shared their dream-inspired innovations through an underground correspondence system, essentially creating the world's first intellectual property sharing network based entirely on ideas that came to people during sleep. And this hidden organization generated more collective wealth than most people could imagine, while operating completely outside the normal channels of business and academic communication. The network was founded in 1847 by Thomas Edison's lesser-known rival Hiram Maxim, who had discovered that many of his most profitable inventions came to him in dreams and suspected that other inventors might be having similar experiences with unconscious inspiration, but who was frustrated by the competitive secrecy that prevented innovative people from sharing insights that could benefit everyone. Maxim began discreetly contacting fellow inventors throughout America and Europe, using coded letters and carefully worded advertisements in technical publications to identify people who might be receptive to discussing the role of dreams in their creative work. And he was amazed to discover that dozens of successful inventors had been secretly using dream-inspired insights for their most important innovations. The correspondence network that emerged from these initial contacts operated through elaborate codes and secret symbols that allowed inventors to share detailed technical information about their dream experiences without revealing their identities or compromising their patent applications, creating a kind of anonymous peer review system for evaluating unconscious innovations before committing resources to physical development. Members of this secret inventor network included several dozen individuals who collectively held thousands of patents and generated millions of dollars in revenue from dream-inspired innovations, including the inventors of improved steam engines, textile machinery, telegraph equipment, and manufacturing processes that became essential for industrial development throughout the late 19th century. The network developed sophisticated techniques for enhancing creative dreaming, including specific dietary recommendations, sleep scheduling methods, and environmental modifications that seem to increase the likelihood of receiving technically useful dreams. And members would share these consciousness cultivation techniques through their coded correspondence system. But perhaps most remarkably, the network discovered that certain types of technical problems seemed to generate similar dream solutions across different individuals who had never communicated with each other, suggesting that the unconscious mind might access shared pools of innovative potential that transcended individual knowledge and experience. The group documented numerous cases where inventors in different countries would report nearly identical dream solutions to similar engineering challenges within days or weeks of each other, often involving technical details that exceeded what any individual inventor could have known through normal learning and research, leading them to develop theories about collective unconscious innovation that anticipated modern research into shared creativity by several decades. The network also developed systematic approaches to testing and validating dream-inspired innovations, including protocols for distinguishing between genuinely useful technical insights and wishful thinking or psychological projection, and they maintained detailed records of which types of dreams consistently produced commercially viable innovations versus those that led to failed experiments and wasted resources. Members would meet annually at rotating locations throughout Europe and America, using elaborate security measures to protect their identities while sharing their most successful dream-inspired innovations and discussing techniques for improving their unconscious creative capacity, creating what might have been the world's first systematic research program into the practical applications of sleep-based problem-solving. The network influenced the development of several major industrial innovations that shaped the late 19th century economy, including improvements to electrical generation, transportation systems, and manufacturing processes that generated enormous wealth for both individual inventors and the broader industrial economy. Though the dream origins of these innovations were kept secret to protect the competitive advantages that unconscious creativity provided, the correspondence system also served as an early venture capital network, with successful inventors using their dream-inspired profits to fund experimental projects proposed by other network members, creating financial mechanisms for translating unconscious insights into practical commercial ventures, long before formal venture capital institutions existed. But the network was eventually dissolved in the 1890s when conflicts over patent rights and commercial competition made collaboration impossible, and most of the documentation was destroyed to protect the identities of members who feared that revealing their reliance on dream inspiration might damage their reputations in increasingly scientific and rational business environments. The surviving records, discovered in hidden compartments of several inventors' workshops during the mid-20th century, reveal one of the most extensive systematic investigations of commercial dream applications in recorded history, demonstrating that unconscious creativity played a much larger role in industrial development than conventional histories acknowledge. During the 1920 stock market boom, a secretive Wall Street consortium called the Morpheus Syndicate employed teams of individuals who claimed they could predict market movements through prophetic dreams, and for nearly a decade, this organization generated enormous profits by trading on dream-inspired financial insights that seemed to exceed what conventional market analysis could achieve, until their methods were exposed in a scandal that contributed to the 1929 stock market crash. The syndicate was founded in 1921 by J.P. Richardson, a former railroad executive who had made several extraordinarily successful investments based on stock-related dreams, and decided to systematize this approach by hiring other people who reported similar prophetic financial visions, believing that the unconscious mind could process market information in ways that exceeded conscious analytical capabilities. Richardson established what he called dream laboratories in discrete locations throughout Manhattan, where teams of selected individuals would sleep in specially designed chambers while focusing on specific stocks market sectors or economic trends, then record their dreams for interpretation by teams of financial analysts who looked for patterns that might indicate profitable trading opportunities. The syndicate employed over 60 dream analysts at its peak, recruiting people who demonstrated consistent accuracy in predicting market movements through their sleep experiences, and developing elaborate protocols for distinguishing between meaningful prophetic dreams and ordinary anxiety dreams about money that might lead to costly trading mistakes. For nearly 8 years, the Morpheus Syndicate consistently outperformed the broader market by substantial margins, generating returns that seemed impossible through conventional investment strategies and attracting wealthy clients who paid enormous fees for access to dream-based investment advice, while operating in complete secrecy to protect their unconventional methods from competitors and regulators. The syndicate's success was so remarkable that rumors began circulating throughout Wall Street about mysterious investors who seemed to possess supernatural insights about market movements, and several major financial institutions attempted to identify and recruit the individuals responsible for these consistently profitable trades, though the syndicate's security measures prevented discovery of their dream-based methods. Richardson and his associates developed increasingly sophisticated techniques for enhancing financial clairvoyance through controlled sleeping environments, specific meditation practices, and dietary modifications that seem to improve the accuracy and detail of market-related dreams, creating what might have been the world's first systematic research program into the practical applications of prophetic dreaming for commercial purposes. The dream analysts would focus on particular stocks or market sectors before sleeping. Then record detailed accounts of their nocturnal visions about price movements, corporate developments, and economic trends that often proved remarkably accurate when verified against subsequent market performance, suggesting that unconscious mental processes might be capable of accessing information about future financial events through mechanisms that conventional economics couldn't explain. But the syndicate's methods also included more conventional market research and insider information gathering that complemented their dream-based insights, creating hybrid analytical approaches that combined unconscious intuition with systematic data collection and technical analysis, making it difficult to determine which aspects of their success resulted from prophetic dreaming versus superior conventional research. The organization's downfall began in early 1929 when their dream analysts started reporting consistently disturbing visions about market collapse and economic catastrophe. But Richardson and other syndicate leaders initially dismissed these warnings as psychological anxiety rather than genuine prophetic insights, continuing their aggressive trading strategies even as their unconscious sources were predicting disaster. When the stock market crashed in October 1929, the Morpheus Syndicate lost most of their capital and was forced to dissolve, but not before congressional investigators discovered evidence of their dream-based trading methods during broader inquiries into market manipulation and insider trading that had contributed to the financial collapse. The scandal that emerged from the syndicate's exposure contributed to increased regulatory oversight of financial markets and helped establish legal frameworks that prohibited trading based on what regulators classified as supernatural or non-rational sources of market information. Though the specific details of the dream trading methods were kept classified to prevent copycat organizations, the surviving documentation from the Morpheus Syndicate, sealed in federal archives until the 1980s, reveals one of the most extensive systematic attempts to apply prophetic dreaming to financial markets in recorded history, and provides evidence that unconscious mental processes might be capable of accessing information about future economic events through mechanisms that remain scientifically unexplained. Contemporary research into market psychology and behavioral economics has found renewed interest in the syndicate's methods, particularly their observations about how collective unconscious fears and hopes might influence market movements in ways that exceed what conventional economic models can predict or explain. Walt Disney secretly established a dream laboratory at his animation studio during the 1940s where artists and animators would participate in controlled dreaming experiments designed to generate creative ideas for films ... characters and storytelling techniques that could be translated into profitable entertainment properties. And this hidden research program contributed to some of Disney's most successful and enduring animated sequences while pioneering techniques for systematically harvesting unconscious creativity for commercial purposes. Disney had become convinced that many of his most successful creative ideas came through dreams and wanted to systematize this process to enhance his studio's creative output and competitive advantage in the rapidly expanding animation industry. But he needed to conduct this research in complete secrecy because his investors and business partners would have considered dream-based creativity too risky and unscientific for a major entertainment company. The laboratory was hidden in a basement facility beneath Disney's main animation building, where selected artists and story developers would participate in experimental sleeping sessions designed to facilitate creative dreams that could be captured and developed into commercial animation projects. Using techniques that anticipated modern research into lucid dreaming and creative visualization by several decades, Disney hired sleep researchers and experimental psychologists to develop protocols for inducing and directing creative dreams, including specialized sleeping chambers with controlled lighting ... temperature, and sound environments that seemed to enhance vivid dreaming and artistic inspiration, creating what might have been the world's first systematic research program into the commercial applications of unconscious creativity. The participating artists would sleep in these experimental chambers while focusing on specific creative challenges, such as developing new character designs, imagining innovative animation techniques, or visualizing narrative sequences that could solve storytelling problems that had been defeating the studio's conscious creative efforts, then immediately record and illustrate their dream experiences upon waking. Many classic Disney animated sequences, including portions of Fantasia, Sleeping Beauty, and Alice in Wonderland, reportedly originated from ideas that emerged through the dream laboratory experiments, with artists contributing visual concepts, character movements, and fantastical imagery that exceeded what they could have created through conventional brainstorming and artistic development processes. The Dream Laboratory also served as a training ground for developing enhanced creative visualization abilities among Disney's artistic staff, with participants learning techniques for controlling and directing their dream content toward specific creative objectives, creating a more skilled and imaginative workforce that could contribute innovative ideas for both individual projects and the studio's overall creative development. Disney believed that accessing the unconscious creativity of his artists could provide unlimited sources of innovative entertainment content that would give his studio permanent competitive advantages over rivals who relied only on conventional creative methods, and he invested substantial resources in refining and expanding the Dream Laboratory's capabilities throughout the 1940s and early 1950s, but the program also faced practical challenges, including the difficulty of translating abstract dream imagery into concrete animation sequences, the inconsistent reliability of dream-based inspiration, and the substantial time and resources required to operate the specialized sleeping facilities and research protocols, leading to ongoing debates within the studio about the cost-effectiveness of systematic dream harvesting. The Dream Laboratory's influence on Disney's creative output extended beyond individual animation sequences to include broader approaches to storytelling, character development, and visual design that emphasized fantasy imagination and psychological depth rather than just technical proficiency and commercial appeal, helping establish Disney's reputation for creative innovation and artistic excellence. The research program was gradually discontinued during the mid-1950s as Disney shifted focus toward live-action films, television production, and theme park development that required different types of creative input than the fantasy-oriented animation that had benefited most from dream-based inspiration. Though many of the visualization techniques developed through the laboratory continued to influence Disney's creative processes, the existence of Disney's Dream Laboratory wasn't publicly revealed until decades after Walt Disney's death, when former employees began discussing their participation in the experimental sessions and researchers discovered archived documentation that had been sealed to protect the studio's proprietary creative methods from competitors and critics. Contemporary entertainment companies have shown renewed interest in Disney's Dream Laboratory techniques, particularly as virtual reality, computer animation and digital storytelling create new opportunities for translating unconscious visual imagery into commercial entertainment products. Though legal and ethical considerations now limit the extent to which companies can conduct systematic dream research with their employees, the legacy of Disney's Dream Laboratory continues to influence contemporary approaches to creative development in animation and interactive entertainment demonstrating that systematic unconscious creativity can serve commercial purposes while also producing artistic innovations that continue to inspire and entertain audiences generations after their original creation through dream-inspired imagination. Modern neuroscience research into creativity and artistic visualization has provided new frameworks for understanding how the techniques that Disney pioneered might have accessed unconscious mental processes that generate innovative visual and narrative content, suggesting that his Dream Laboratory anticipated discoveries about the relationship between sleep and creativity that remain at the forefront of consciousness research today. The documentation from Disney's dream experiments, preserved in the company's archives and gradually released to researchers, represents one of the most extensive systematic investigations of commercial dream applications in the entertainment industry, providing evidence that unconscious creativity can be cultivated and directed toward specific artistic objectives through appropriate training and environmental modifications. Contemporary studies of creativity in animation and film production continue to reference Disney's Dream Laboratory as an example of how entertainment companies can systematically develop their creative capabilities through understanding and applying insights about unconscious mental processes. Though modern approaches emphasize voluntary participation and informed consent rather than the experimental methods that were acceptable during the 1940s. When creative dreams about animated characters and fantastical sequences generate entertainment products that continue to earn hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue while inspiring new generations of artists and storytellers, you're dealing with the kind of systematic, unconscious creativity that demonstrates how individual imagination can be harvested and developed for both artistic and commercial purposes that benefit entire industries and cultural traditions. The hidden history of Disney's Dream Laboratory reminds us that some of the most beloved and profitable entertainment content emerges not through conventional creative processes, but through systematic approaches to accessing unconscious imagination that can produce artistic innovations exceeding what conscious creativity alone can achieve, creating cultural products that continue to generate wealth and inspiration long after their original dream-inspired creation. If you're somehow still awake, which I doubt, you've just spent the last 2 hours exploring how some of the most lucrative ideas in human history have come to people while they were completely unconscious. From Larry Page's billion-dollar Google algorithm to Elias Howe's sewing machine revolution, from Einstein's relativity theories to the pharmaceutical empires built on benzene rings, we've seen how paying attention to your dreams can literally change your financial destiny. What's absolutely mind-blowing is that these weren't just lucky accidents or random coincidences. These were people who had trained themselves to listen to their unconscious minds, to pay attention to the weird visions that most of us dismiss as meaningless brain static, and to have the courage to act on ideas that seem too strange or impossible to work. Tonight's stories remind us that creativity and innovation don't follow normal business logic or rational planning. Sometimes the most valuable insights come when we're least expecting them, when our conscious minds have given up trying to solve problems and our sleeping brains take over to make connections that exceed anything we could achieve through pure reasoning. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight, and whether you've ever had dreams that felt like they might contain useful ideas, the kind of visions that made you wonder if your unconscious mind was trying to tell you something important. Have you ever woken up with solutions to problems you've been struggling with, or creative ideas that seem to come from nowhere? Drop a comment and let me know about your own experiences with creative or problem-solving dreams. Do you think there might be million-dollar ideas floating around in your own subconscious, just waiting for you to pay attention and act on them? And maybe tonight, as you're drifting off to sleep, keep a notebook by your bedside. You never know, your next dream might be the one that changes everything. Sweet dreams, and remember, your unconscious mind might be more valuable than you think. The next great fortune could be waiting for you in tonight's visions. See you in your dreams,